No, he's not, and he is about to make a very important decision. So it's wise of him to spend time at this moment because there's a knight on h4. What is that knight doing on h4? It's protecting f5, but ultimately it wants to sit on the f5 square. So if you take e takes f5 for black, and white plays bishop takes f5, I'm going to accomplish my goal. I am going to put a knight on f5, and knights on f5 are very scary because they start attacking your king, and there could be a sacrifice in the air on h6 or g7. And I think this is the exact type of position that Alireza thrives in. So if I am Roddick, I don't want any part of this. I think he would prefer to leave his pawn on e6, keep some of the tension in the position, and then try to, once he shores up the situation on e6, castle, and then play for some of the holes in white's position thanks to this d4, f4, f5. There's e4 square and things to take advantage of going forward.
I agree with you. Let's take a look at World Champions game against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. It was Grunfeld. We left it somewhere at Queen d6, e takes d6, Rook c1, Bishop b7, hitting the e4 pawn, Bishop d3, Knight c6, finishing the development, King d2, and yeah, we see that White did not castle and used the advantage that the king was in the center. So king is closer now to the center. Rook a c8, h4, knight b4, bishop b1, rook e8, putting more pressure on e4 pawn, a3, knight c6, and bishop a2. Somehow I have a feeling that white made huge improvement.
This is a tremendous position for Magnus. And I just want to first point out that rook takes e4 is not a free pawn. You see this often in the Roy Lopez. And if you take on e4, the bishop goes to d5. It hits the piece that captured on e4 and the knight on c6. So that would win white some material on the spot. So rook takes e4. Perhaps it's possible to sacrifice material and somehow survive the
Yeah,
game, but that's not what you want. And
indeed.
if you can't take that pawn, White's position is tremendous. You have a great bishop on a2 staring at a pawn on f7, and White can actually go for an attack because you won h4, your next move can be h5, and that black king starts to feel a bit uncomfortable with the opening of the h file and the bishop staring down towards the king on g8.
Indeed, and that the queens are not on the board, it doesn't mean that white cannot have attack on the king side. I love bishop d5, h5, and putting more and more pressure. And we see that d6 pawn is very weak. So he did take on e4. I'm expecting something like bishop d5 and sacrifice of this rook, because now the rook and the knight, they are both hanging. So I'm expecting something like knight a5, bishop takes e4, and bishop takes e4. However, MVL is playing pretty fast.
And we did see him sacrifice material against Radek Wojtaszek several
Yeah.
rounds ago. So he's not opposed to giving up material from his pet lines. But this at the end of here, Rook c7, I don't think that Black has equalized. Perhaps in the future there could be some simplification where it gives Black chances to make the draw, but I'm not so sure that this is what you want here if you are Maxime. And against Magnus in particular, he is the best in the world at grinding out victories from positions that may look like they're on the verge of being drawn.
Yeah, indeed, rook c7 and a7, and he did play bishop d5, so we'll see a lot of moves. Knight a5.
Mm-hmm. So this line is forced.
He will take the rook on e4, and then we're expecting rook c7. Magnus was actually always sitting in the center of the playing hall, and today he arrived pretty late, walked to board 4, which is the central board of the playing hall. He saw that he was not sitting there. It was Anish who was sitting there, and he was like, Yeah, do you think it might be a little psychological blow for him that yeah,
Sitting
not
in
sitting here and they gave me different board? What's going on?
That's I don't know why it was done. I don't know why it happened, but that is probably just a little not off-putting exactly, but you feel like, wait, I'm used to playing here, and now I had this expectation which hasn't been met, and it's not a big deal. All the chess boards are the same. They're the same sets. They just happen to be in a slightly different location.
He is doing good in this game with bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, and rook c7. So maybe finally he felt that this pressure is off, that I'm not anymore sitting in the center of the hall. And yeah, now we're having Magnus having pretty big advantage, I would say, against MVL.
It's a position he can just play for a long time, and he has an extra rook compared to a minor piece. His rook on h1 can soon swing over to the queen side as well. Just don't put your rook on c1 too soon, because knight b3 check would be a fork. You don't want to overlook
Yeah.
those pesky knights. So if you're going to bring your rook to c1, which you want to do, white will probably start with king to e2 and then
Yeah.
bring that rook over to the queen side. And I think that Magnus has great winning chances.
And actually, we shall take a look at Andrei Yasipenko's game as well, because he is just 1 point behind the leader, sole leader of the tournament, Anish Giri. Um, and if other players draw and he wins, he might be in tie as well.
So he needs Anish to lose and all of the players with a half point behind Anish to draw or
Yeah.
lose, and then he needs to win. That seems quite unlikely, but it is possible. It's
Yeah.
mathematically possible.
There's theoretical chances for Andrei Yasipenko to get a tie break against Anish Giri if all other players lose, or if they make draw, then there will be 5-player tie. But looking at Jordan van Foreest's game, I don't think that that will be the scenario.
No, and even looking at this game with Danchenko with the white pieces, very solid position. There's definitely more to this than meets the eye. It's not just equal material, so it should be a draw. Black can play this knight to e5 next. It's white's turn right now, but a knight to e5 and start trying to break free and get aggressive. And well, there's a rook on c2 and a rook on d1. Those rooks probably want to double up, but you
Yeah.
need to choose your file, right? Which file you're going to use, the c file or probably the d file. But if you play rook to d2 right now, knight e5 immediately comes. You try to bring that knight c4 with tempo. It just feels like a position with much more life in it than I think I would initially give it credit for. And now that I'm diving into it, I feel like you need to be careful for both sides.
Yeah, yeah, it's very double-edged. Anything can happen. This is the current position. Let's go to Anish's game, because after um, rook f4, queen b3 was played. So David Anton did not like the idea of d5 and having the queen on fourth rank with maybe future pins. He plays queen b3 and king h8 is the answer, getting away from maybe c5 and queen e6 checks.
There is one major downside, though, to putting the queen on b3. It makes f3 more protected, so you don't have to worry about sacrifices. But the a5 pawn requires defense, and so your rook kind of needs to stay on a1, whereas you'd probably prefer to play rook d1. So just an interesting little nuance there. I think that white's position still is pleasant. You just have to keep an eye out for this g5 push at some moment. And honestly, I think that Anish can maybe shuffle. Like, what is White's plan? How is White going to go for more if Black just has the idea of playing Queen C6 and King G8, King H8? I just am trying to figure out how will White win this game.
Yeah, I'm not big fan of queen b3 as well, because the pawn on a5 was nicely protected, and now the rook is not as free as before, like rook c1. Now the a5 pawn is hanging. Rook d1 is of course possible. I see the evaluation bar and it says big plus for white. However, I think over the board it's it's very decent position for black.
Yeah, and I would say that stopping d5 was David's priority. So the queen on a4 was getting into a pin because that rook on f4 through the whole fourth rank over to the queen could have been a problem. So that's in large part why queen b3 was played. I'm just not seeing how David goes from here. Like, what is his plan? What's his idea? Is he going to put a rook on d1? Great. Black can always bring that bishop right to c7 or e7 to keep the pawn defended. So I like the look of White's position. Vishy was saying the same thing. I guess I just don't see the clear breakthrough of how to turn this from an aesthetically pleasing position into a practically good one.
Yeah, one thing I would add is this: will this game be the scenario of that a threat is bigger than the execution? Because if, let's say, you think that Anish wants to go g5, g4, and that looks really scary, and you're not doing anything against it, because king h8 is also serving that plan of g5, g4. I'm interested if David Anton will take some measures against it, or he will think that no, it's not such a scary plan. I can ignore it and continue with my play.
And everybody still relying on David to avoid a loss so that they even have a chance. And he is the man that everyone has their
Yeah.
eyes on. But I'm looking at Jordan's position, top left of our screen here. He's just in great shape. He's got that pass pawn. He doesn't care about the material. Sure, he has a pawn deficit. That's not important. That pawn on a5 is worth at least two pawns, and
Yes.
it's just running up the board.
Indeed, Bishop b5 was taken in Jordan's game, so Niels did not want to have extra piece because these pawns on b5 and a5, they are so well supported and they can run very fast because they are doubled pawns on A and B file, and the bishops on D2 and F3. They are doing such an amazing job supporting the push of the pawns B6 and A6 that Niels could not take it anymore and just gave back the piece with bishop takes B5 and queen takes B5.
I I think that Black's losing. I don't like the position, but I think Black might objectively be lost or close to it at this point. And look at Niels' clock. He's 18 and a half minutes to Jordan's hour 28. This, unfortunately for Niels, he ran into an extremely well prepared and ready to play Jordan van Forest. And I think that Jordan's going to win in the next
I
40
agree
minutes.
with you. The clock situation is in favor of Jordan van Foreest. 18 minutes for coming 18 moves is not so easy to make for Niels Grandelius, especially in such a game. Jordan's chances looks very good. In Anish's game, David Anton played h3. That's a nice prophylactic move, giving space to the king so that you never have to worry about the back rank. Is that against g5 as well?
It is. It's a nice multi-purpose, flexible move. It's a move you'd like to play anyway. And if you play g5 for black, you're probably just getting yourself into huge trouble because you don't have the follow-up threat of g4. So
Yeah.
it makes sure that you have the idea under control. Black can still consider playing g5. I don't think it's out of the question. It just has some risk to it because white's are already meeting it well in advance.
Yep. Very nice. Let's take a look at bird's eye view to have an idea of what's going on in the tournament.
Okay, so the game between Duda and Hare is still going. So
That was my first thought as well. I looked at it and I was like, oh, this game is still going on.
and maybe Duda had some deep preparation, not in terms of, oh, I'm going to memorize 40 moves, nothing like that. Just I want to play a slightly better end game with zero risk in the position. So he's still going. He'll still try to press this one out. But Roddick on that board next to him in the second row in the middle there. He did play queen d7. He did not want to see a
Yeah.
knight land on f5, and keeping the tension makes both of their lives more difficult because it's a struggle to come up with the follow-up. Look at Fabiano's game, by the
Yeah,
way.
I was also looking at that game, Fabiano's game, getting really sharp. Let's take a look at that game closely. So after knight e3, f5, as you mentioned, Robert, it was played. Knight takes g4, f takes g4, and bishop takes g6. Now Fabiano either can take on g6 or on f3.
Okay, well, if he's going to take on f3, he would have to take on e1 first,
Yeah.
or does he actually? Wait a second, because if you take on,
Then knight takes.
uh, I was trying to think like if you, yeah, the knight will take, so the knight saves up. But if you take on f3 right away, I was wondering if you have this follow up with queen g4, and you're trying to go checkmate white immediately. Say, okay, you can have my rook on e8. I'll like queen g4, but the problem is rook takes e8 for white, and
Yeah.
I now I'm going to win your f3 pawn if you try to checkmate me. So white is in time to just win the material.
Yeah, so the idea was just to put it on the board now. If the rooks are off and queen g4, queen f3,
Hmm.
but if white takes with the bishop, then queen g4, and suddenly white is in big trouble as queen f3 loses the queen, and g3, just queen h3, no?
That's what I'm looking at. I don't see.
White the board is still saying that white is winning.
Oh, bishop f7 check. What a beautiful save.
Ah, nice. And here, then rook e8, bishop f8. Still not so clear.
Yeah,
Queen f1.
right. You stop the checkmate. It's still
Yeah.
a potential attack, but white is ahead material. So, wow, bishop f7 check to survive. It's easy to see when you have the evaluation bar and you're like, why
Yeah.
is white still doing well? But you have to see that in advance if you are Tari. If you're going to play bishop takes e8, but rook takes e8 instead would solve all of white's issues. So, Fabi,
And that is why he took on g6.
it's the right decision. He may have triple isolated pawns, which we do not see every day, but
Yeah.
he has attacking potential in this position. The open F file, the bishop on d6 staring at the pawn h2, and the fact that white has not developed his queen side, the rook on a1 still on starting square, the bishop on c1 hasn't moved. It gives black attacking chances.
Yeah, indeed, I agree with you. It's going to be very interesting game. White still has problems of developing the pieces. And we can have a look at another game, Firuza against Wojtaszek. So after bishop h3, queen d7 was played by Radoslav, not giving a chance for white to get on f5 square. After queen d7, queen d3.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's just so much
my
tension.
bishop is on h7 and you pin the pawn. Yeah. Yeah.
Whose bishop staring at f5 is better? White's bishop protecting f5 but hitting the e6 pawn, or black's bishop hitting the f5 pawn and staring through it at the queen? Like, it's just a strange situation where both bishops have potential, and right now that pawn on f5 is in the way of them both.
Yeah, I must say that visually it looks very nice for a white, but he needs to be very accurate, very precise, and very energetic, not to let the initiative go away. Because if, as you mentioned, Robert, if black manages to consolidate, get over all the threats, then f4, f5 pawns cannot go back, and e4 square is huge for black.
I would think about castling queenside as well for black, just saying, I'm going to get my king out of here, try to get my king to b8. But castling queenside has risks because you've pushed a pawn to a5 in front of your king. That could be a problem. And Alireza, he needs to win this game. We actually have a tweet to show with all the information here. And Sobiko, if we have these huge ties,
oh my God.
now we know
scenario.
the answer. And the good news for Anish, it seems that no matter what, wait a second, except for one scenario I see there, Anish is in the tiebreak regardless. So
Yeah. So what's that one scenario?
I see if Fabiano Alireza. Wait, oh, this is if Anish loses. Sorry, I'm like seeing three-way tie, but then Anish's name wasn't there. So if Anish does
Oh, okay.
not lose, if he's actually in a tie for first place, it
Yeah.
seems that every scenario involves him.
Yeah. That's good news for me.
This is, small chances for some of these results to occur, but you see a three-way tie with 8.5, 7% chance that it
Yeah.
happens. And if Alireza, Fabiano, and Anish end up with 8.5 points, then Anish will play Fabiano, and you can see, okay, everything down here with if Jordan wins, it looks like Jordan with the victory is in many of these tiebreaks. So
Yeah.
he seems like he has great chances to play for the crown.
Indeed, we did not really check these numbers, but we just wanted actually to show you that there are many different options possible, and who knows what's gonna happen.
Yes, and uh, it's true. We did not verify that account was chess by the numbers, so I hope that they have done their due diligence to give us that information. But we do appreciate seeing that just to
Thank you
know
very
what
much for the
happens
tweets. Yeah.
in all of these tiebreak scenarios where multiple people are finishing with the same score. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. We have plenty of life left in every game right now, and Anish, as we've been talking about, he can just take care of business and say no tiebreak at all. I'm going to finish and clear first.
Yeah, and let's jump to Jordan van Foreest's game. After c takes b5, bishop takes b5, queen takes b5, knight d7 was played, and bishop b7, planting this bishop on b7. Afterwards, a6 and bishop e3. This looks so nice for white.
How does black even hope to survive this? That
Yeah,
rook on a7 is stuck. And you see this very often where you put bishop next to it and a pawn on a6, and the rook can't move. And if you look
13
at
minutes,
Niels,
Robert. 13 minutes. Nils is down to 13 minutes for coming 16 moves.
I'm just looking at him here. This is a painful experience. And the way Neil started this tournament with 2 wins and then 3.5 out of 5, it looked like this may be the event of his life. He's currently at 6 out of 12, an even score. And if he loses, he actually finishes with a minus. That's how strong this event is. And
Yeah.
that's not a good feeling, but he has played enterprising chess and he's just ran into the brick wall of preparation that is Jordan van Forest.
Yeah, and he moved to the queen, queen d8. This looks very, very bad for black. Although we should never say anything about the game until there is no result, because we've seen Anish Giri had great chances yesterday to win the game, but it was drawn.
That's true. Though here, it seems like a6 for white is that may have been a move that cost Anish his win, but here
Yeah.
today, a6 is well defended. Bishop a5 can be the follow up. The queen on d8 is running out of squares as well. This is just painful. I'm looking at this board and I would be tempted to resign if I were Niels. He's not going to resign. He's going to try to the bitter end, but it feels very straightforward for white right now.
Indeed, what an impressive performance by the Dutchman. Jordan van Foreest is close to winning, and there will be a scenario if he wins this one and Niche draws, then probably we have the tiebreak of two Dutchmen facing each other for the title.
And that would be a nice pairing for Dutch fans to see for certain that a Dutchman will end up in first place and win Zee. That, of course, would be a big accomplishment for either of those two players.
Indeed. Where shall we go?
Well, I'm looking at all four boards here, and we're looking at Jordan van Forest, who he wants to be the first Dutch winner of Zee since the year 1985. Jan
85,
Timmer.
yeah. That's a long time.
Yeah, the Dutch fans have waited a long time to see one of their own win this tournament, and that's what they're looking for right now.
Yeah, big day today. What's gonna happen? Is it going to be a niche? Is it going to be Jordan or somebody else? We will know in coming hours as the games are still going on. Jordan's game looks very nice for him. He just played a6 with all sorts of threats, I guess. Like Jordan can even wait, yeah, not play bishop e3 and allow knight c5, but at some point bishop a5, rook c1. This is just strategically lost for black.
And the moves for white are very easy to see, and for black, I don't see like a single idea.
Yeah,
Your pieces can't move. You are up a pawn, but your pawns are in e6 and d6. That's where your extra pawns are. White's pawn is all the way up the board in a6. Bishop a5 is an idea. Bishop e3 is an idea. Rook c1, as you mentioned, is a good move as well. The rook on a7 trapped over there. It has to be lost.
yeah, it has to be winning for Jordan van Foreest. In the game of Fabiano Caruana and Ariantari, nothing much happened. After h takes g6, rook takes e8 was played, rook takes e8, and knight e1.
Okay.
White still needs to develop.
How do you feel about those triple pawns, though?
Yeah, if white is in time to put the pieces on their best squares, let's say, I would play knight d3, maybe afterwards bishop f4, and if I'm allowed, queen d2, rook e1. Of course, I would love to play with white then.
And I'm trying to figure this out because this knight on c6 is the only piece for black that isn't doing so well. So a move like knight d8 comes to mind, but I'm trying to figure out where exactly I want that knight to be. And the answer is c4 or e4. So is it ridiculous to go, say, queen f5 right now, and then knight b8, knight d7, and then decide I can branch in either direction with knight f6 or knight b6? It's a lot of time, but what can white do as black goes for that plan? It seems ridiculous, maybe, but I don't see actually what white is doing here. And if black has time to bring that knight in, that's the last piece needed to solve this puzzle.
Yeah, and that was the drawback of b4, of course, which was played in the opening at very early stage. b4 was against long castle, but it seems that black had choice to castle short side or not, and after b4, it's way more better for black to castle short side. This is the current position that we get. Very good chances for black here to win the game.
I like black's position. You have the ability to be active, to create threats, and this b4 c3 situation, which we talked about a really long time ago when it first occurred, that could be the major drawback in Arian's position. So I'm looking, like I said, that knight is the one piece not doing its own, not holding its weight in such a position. And so I think that if I can bring that knight into a better location, black is just going to increase the pressure. And not to mention, I can try to bring my pieces to the h file with like a queen f5, queen h5, and then try to bring my rook over there to go for a checkmate. But I think the knight, that's what it's about right now.
Yeah, indeed. Knight on c6. And there we are, having many players keeping an eye on the gold medal. Anish Giri is trying either to become a sole winner of the tournament or give others chance for a tie break. We can actually have a little break right now, and yeah, we will be back shortly.
Yeah, so this game I played in a tournament in the Sharjah Open. I think it was a very beautiful combination that was taken from the very old game of Garry Kasparov, I think. I managed to do it again, and you ask me, it is for me it's a better game, but I don't know. This position, of course, came from Sicilian, as you can see, and my rook is on b4. It's a very odd place for the rook, but this is how you should play in Sicilian, not very normal way. So here I had a very interesting combination that I started from 10 years before this game was played. No, not 10 years, but maybe 6 years before the game was played. And yeah, this is rook takes b7. First, I think this combination was played by Kasparov. I'm not sure who was the opponent. Maybe it was Shirov, but I'm not 100% sure. So rook takes b7 is the idea is to, if he takes and then go e5. I think the Kasparov game was more about playing b4 and paralyzing this knight, and the knight was weak, but here I had more tactical way. So after e5, the d5 move is kind of forced, and here again this combination game, knight takes d5, e takes d5, knight f5, and white has very strong attack. Knight on f5 is very, very powerful piece. And bishop, she played bishop c5, but I took on d5. I am rook down here, but I have very good compensation. It's the knight on f5, bishop on d5. All of my pieces are attacking her king, so castle. And here I could have taken the knight, but then I'm exchanged down after queen trades, and the position will be a bit soft. So I wanted to go a bit more tactical. So I played b4. She has to go back with the bishop, and then queen g4 was played. And g6, e6. Okay, here there are many moves, but one of the best tries was queen f6, which she played. And here I played e7, rook e8, and here also another very nice tactic, I think, which finishes the game, is bishop takes f7. Check, and if so there is no way to take. I think if queen takes, knight h6 check, it's a fork. And if she takes this queen, and this queen's d4 check, and the king is made. So this was a very nice game. Several sacrifices, first rook, then knight, then bishop. So it was a very, very interesting game, and I think one of my best games. I learned a lot from Kasparov, of course. I think one of the people that really had most influence on my chess was Kasparov. A lot of things that I know in chess is from the games that he played, the books that he wrote. So yeah, it helped me a lot, and I had the privilege to play against him online in St. Louis tournament, which was played in Lichess, and I lost that game, but I had a very good position. So that was very interesting. I recommend for people to see that game. It was 960, but anyway, it was a very interesting game, and I think it is the game that will go down in the history.
Last round of Tata Steel Chess Tournaments, and yours truly commentators, International Master Sopika Goromishvili and Grandmaster Robert has all still here. The round is very tense. What's gonna happen? Nobody knows. Robert, shall we take a look at standings?
We should, because this will help us figure out who will end up in first place in the Tata Steel Chess Tournament. Of course, Nishikiri in the lead. If he wins, there's no question. But if he draws and other players win, there will be a tie for first. And in the event of a tie, we will have to use our beloved tie breaks. And
Yes.
the first tiebreaker is mutual result. They all drew each other at the top because they're the largely undefeated players up there. And with that being said, you go to the Sonnenberg Burger score, which is where you get the full score of your opponent. If you beat them, you get half of their score if you've drawn them. So you want to beat the players who do very well in the tournament to get their score. And number of blacks is another tiebreaker. So if you've had 7 blacks, that benefits your tiebreaks because there is a first move advantage. And then finally, it gets random. If everything else is tied, there's a drawing of lots.
Indeed, and shall we take a look at bird's eye view right now because we have so many games going on, very important ones. If Jordan wins and Anish draws, the tiebreak is almost guaranteed. Anish has a slightly probably worse position, but I'm not afraid.
Well, somebody who's not afraid is Jordan Van Forest because his position is excellent. You can see in the top left of your screen, that's Jordan on camera right now. His queen on b5, bishop on b7, pawn on a6, bishop on a5, everything is coordinated wonderfully. He may be down a pawn, but that pawn on a6 is better than that rook on a7, which can't move. So it seems like a position that Jordan just needs to figure out the right way to do this, and he should be able to secure that full point.
I like Fabiano's chances as well as knight d8, and look at these light squares, the tripled pawns on g-file. It won't be good in the end game, but queens are still on the board and everything. The game is very complicated.
Yeah, this G pawns. The thing about them is they're weak if they can be attacked because pawns want to be defended by other pawns, and isolated pawns cannot be defended by pawns. But the issue that Aryan is facing is that his light squares are extremely vulnerable. And how do you attack those pawns? You bring a knight to e3, but as soon as you play knight c2, knight e3, something like that, that rook on e8 for black lands on e4 and protects the pawn. So even if you go after them, you can't win them. Yeah. And black went knight d8 to bring that knight to likely f7 and try to make progress with that piece. So I like Fabiano's position. I think he has nothing to worry about, and it's Aryan who needs to fight a plan.
Indeed. Let's take a look at World Champions game because it seems like he's winning right now because the exchange is an exchange, and I guess MVL doesn't have enough compensation for that. Rook c7, a6 was played, h5. World champion is going for the attack anyway, without the light squared bishop, b5, h6, bishop f6, bishop g5, and bishop h8. Ooh, very passive position for black.
It somewhat reminds me of the game yesterday between Anish and Alireza, where here black can't move that many pieces. But the thing is, there's still fight left, and you have to prove that you can win this game. If you could deliver a check on the final rank, there would be a checkmate thanks to this pawn on h6, taking away the king's escape square. So white can go for an attack here. I don't think that this is over just yet, but I would not enjoy playing this from Maxim's point of view. And even though they're not playing for first place, it may seem like they don't have much to play for. I think Magnus enjoys making statements against his closest rivals. And because Maxim is leading the Kansas tournament, if he does in fact win that tournament, I think Magnus wants him to remember the last time they played, he would have won the game.
And of course, he is so far losing a lot of elo points in this tournament, so this win and would be pretty nice. And of course, finishing the tournament with a win is always great.
Yes, at least you have a happy memory to depart on. And it does look very bad for black, but Magnus needs to prove it. And, well,
I guess we shall update Alireza's game because after queen d7, queen d3, queen c6 was played by black, which is very logical, getting out of the pin but still protecting the e6 pawn, knight b5 and knight c4. Oh. No captures yet?
Zero captures.
Zero captures.
Wow, this is strange. It looks like did Alireza just play bishop f4? He's trying to attack the c7 pawn, and normally you try to defend that pawn, say, with your rook to c8, but that move has a big problem. There's a fork on a7, an unexpected fork
Yeah.
if you try to defend the pawn. And
Oh, sorry. Let's just put it on the board,
well,
just
yeah,
like this.
yes, and no matter what ends up on c8, if you play rook c8 instead of castling to protect c7, it's knight a7 still wins material.
Dead. How to defend it? Maybe knight. Yeah. The big question is that I cannot put anything on d6. Oh, I can put. I forgot there is pin. I thought that white takes the pawn on e6, but of course the bishop is on h7, so f5 pawn is pinned.
Yeah, so I guess maybe you can play one of these, either knight d6 or bishop d6, but it still
Yeah.
looks
Do you want to play that?
no.
No.
No, but I think I might have to. All right, if I play knight d6, what's white's response going to be there?
Knight d6. Um,
There are no trades, so it's still just a very
no
complicated
trades.
situation.
That's very complicated. Maybe I can play for something like b3, c4. Can that be an option?
Possibly. I don't pretend to have all the answers here. I just saw my pawn was under attack and I was going to
Yeah.
block your piece attacking me. So knight d6 is what I settled on. But b3 looks like a very good move to make sure that knight can't get back to c4 and to maybe play c4 yourself.
Tough position for black. And look at it. All players who are half point behind, their games look pretty good.
That's true. And that's probably not what Anish wants to see. But the thing is, if he did his calculations beforehand and if he was looking at it like, as long as I draw, I'll make the playoff at a minimum, which is likely given he's been in the lead of this tournament for a while. And we saw that the standings, the tiebreaks do favor him at this point, then he can just breathe a sigh of relief. As long as he draws his game, he will at minimum be in a tiebreak playoff for first. So I don't think the number of people winning their games really matters to him.
Interesting what's going to happen in Anish's game. Queen d3, queen c5 was played, putting pressure on a5 pawn. I don't know. What do you think? I think that there are enough chances for black to have some counterplay on the weak pawns.
Oh, I'm just reading body language right now, and they both were leaning over the board there, like very interested in their position. And David, he's about on his first rank, and for a moment it looked like Anish was on the 7th rank. So Anish had his head in the game, quite literally, and now we see that David is left to think about that a5 pawn. Is that going to be a problem? Do I need to make a move, as you said, like queen c3 or queen a3 or something like that? But the position remains pretty solid for black, even if the engines favor white. I think that it's hard to prove the advantage.
Yeah, and Jordan is actually sacrificing an exchange again? What's going on? My God. So we had bishop f6, bishop a5, queen e8, and bishop c7. He doesn't care about the rook on a1. Bishop c7, bishop takes a1. Will he even take this bishop on a1? I'm not sure anymore.
So you're saying like just like bishop takes d6 and say, oh,
I
you
don't
can
know.
keep your bishop
I
too?
can expect anything from Jordan. Not necessarily that bishop d6 is a good move. Probably rook takes a1. And yeah, what's going on? It's just an exchange. Okay,
it's an exchange, but
just an exchange.
is that rook on a7 really a rook?
No.
It looks like a rook. It moves like a rook.
It looks like a rook.
But is it a rook? Because it doesn't really have any room to use here. And the d6 pawn is hanging. The queen
prisoner. It's a prisoner.
Yeah, it is. And the queen can slide up to e7 to defend the d6 pawn. But then you say, I'm going to win you that rook on a7. You'll just play bishop b6 and that rook is stuck.
Yeah, indeed. Rook. Okay, rook takes a1 was not played yet. Jordan is not on the board at the moment, but look at the time. 12 minutes for Niels Grandelius to figure out how to continue this game for coming 13 moves, where players get additional 50 minutes on their clocks, and 1 hour, more than an hour, for Jordan van Foreest.
I'm looking at the way this game has gone. Jordan just came back. He will take this bishop on a1. The rook on a7 can't move. I feel like even if you gave Niels an hour more on his clock, which he will get, right? Once you reach
Yeah.
40, you'll get the 50 minutes. But there's no plan for black. You just either are going to lose this game at some point, or white will make some mistake that allows black back into the game. That's the problem with a position of this nature. You don't even have some sort of active try to cause some problems, I don't think.
Indeed. And speaking of the leaderboard, in Anish's game, there was no move yet. But I'm just wondering if if white plays something like Queen C3, is white threatening B4, and how bad it will be for black?
If white gets in b4, yeah, I would say it's not the most pleasant thing, but the problem with playing b4 is now c4 becomes a little more difficult to defend. So if later in the game black is able to put in another attacker on the c4 pawn, you'd like to push your pawn back to b3. So I think that David wants his pawn on b3 and on b4 at the same time, right? Depending on how black plays this. And I guess even if you do get the move b4 in, what next? I'll move my queen out the way, and you gain some space, but you have to prove that you have a follow-up. Otherwise, you just advance your pawn and nothing really to show for it.
Just to create some sort of, yeah, you don't want to play b4 b5 because black is not obliged to take a takes b5. b4 b5 just gives up c5 square, and yeah, if you don't have energetic follow-up, then that's not going to be nice.
Well, it's not like black really has all that much to do either, I guess. This rook went back to f6. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like rook f4, bishop e7, just like back and forth a little bit, just saying, how are you going to win this game? And Anish does not mind making a draw, especially from this position where he doesn't have sort of winning plans at the moment. So
Yeah.
I think that both sides are accepting of their position.
Yeah, indeed. And David Anton is taking his time. The time more or less is. Oh, he played queen, or not?
No, he's
No,
not.
he didn't play yet. Yeah, queen c5 is on the board. 40 minutes for Anish Giri for coming 15 moves, and 31 for David Anton. Time is not crucial here, as it's such a game that you can shuffle around and win the time.
And when you look at the players, it's not clear whose move it is. So I understand why you thought it was Anish's turn, because as I actually look at them, it does feel like Anish is the one sitting deep in thought about what he's about to play. And well, now we can't see Anish because a player walked into our. Oh, look at our
There we
producers.
go.
So quick with it, giving us the angle that we need to see how Anish is thinking here. And of course, somebody walks into that struggle.
Ruins everything.
Yes,
all the
but
time.
I'm just trying to get a read about the nerves at this point. And he seems not like we normally see him, which is happy-go-lucky. He's just happy to play and seems to be pretty confident. I think he's feeling the standing, the last
pressure,
round, the pressure of trying to win this tournament. And he has been leading for a couple rounds. He's probably trying to rid himself of the disappointment of yesterday's game, though that sometimes just seeps into your mind during the next round. So I think ultimately he will be fine given the nature of this position. It's still pretty locked up. No clear plans for white just yet. And David, he makes the move queen c3, and he should be better.
Plays queen c3, and now it's interesting. Anish will just wait and see, or he will have some plan in his mind. I think he will take time. Normally he is a walker, so when you're walking, you're checking other games, of course, so he knows what's going on. But the most important thing for him is his game anyway. Other games doesn't matter. These games matter. Bishop somewhere. Bishop c7. Is Anish threatening d5?
Perhaps there's
No.
d5 to improve the bishop, but there's also bishop b8, bishop a7 at some point. Like you can be sneaky and at the right moment get your bishop to an improved diagonal. You can also play b6 for black. Of
But what
course, this is
about b4 now?
yeah. b4 is the move that I would consider first of all, and then queen c6 back. You
Queen c6. Yeah.
kind of have to. And you mentioned the move b5. White can play b5 right away, and you do not want to take that pawn on b5. That's for sure.
Probably queen c5 back, but then b6?
Yeah, b6 is one of those moves where you want to take space, but then you might regret it later as
Yeah.
rook will get to c8. It's a tough decision, not easy to figure out in its entirety.
Indeed. b4, b5 is a plan to consider, but if you don't have follow-up, you don't want to commit.
Yeah, you need to be in the right time to play b4, but I think it is the right move. It's just one of those things where later in the game, if you don't play accurately, you're like, ah, I wish my pawn
Look at
could
this,
go
it's
back."
so beautiful. We see all the four games, the cameras, who is thinking. It's so nice.
Wow. That's actually a cool view. I'm glad we
Yeah.
have that. We'll call for it later. But right now, it's David on the clock. And I think the best thing Anish is doing here is he made the move bishop c7 extremely quickly. And that puts the pressure back on David. Are you going to play b4? Is that too committal? Plenty of time for white. They're on move 26, and they will reach the time
He's
control.
about to move, yeah.
Yeah, and
He's
uh,
about to move.
yeah, well,
And b4 is on the board. Queen
okay.
c6, I expect. And maybe c5 instead of b5.
Ah, but c5, again, that's one of these committal decisions where your b4 pawn down the line will be a problem for white
Yeah.
because it's on a dark square. Black has a dark square bishop, and it's a good move though. I like c5. It could just really cause black problems with the e5 pawn getting in trouble, though. Yeah, maybe c5 is good. The more I look at it, it's a hard move for me to wrap my mind around just because of the problem with the b4 pawn, but you're very directly threatening to take on d6 and undermine the e5 pawn.
But d5 is an option for black, I guess. Now d4 is a threat. Does white want to go into these complications or
No.
not? We will see that pretty soon. What's going to happen in the game of Anish Giri versus David Anton. Let's take a look at Jordan's game because he had the most clear position from all these four. After bishop a5, queen e8, bishop c7, takes, and d5 was played. And yeah, it's as bad as it looks.
Yes. You play the move d5, and I could give you another turn. You have no real good moves to make. Bishop d6 will win back the exchange if you want it, and that rook on a7 is never getting back in the game. So the problem is black remains up a pawn if I take your rook on f8, but I just put my rook to c1, and my bishop and pawn take away your rook, and it's just,
Yeah, d5, I really don't like this move. It was hanging there, but then you lose the way to play knight c5, and actually knight c5. Oh, he did play something. Let's take
bishop
a look.
d6.
Bishop d6, yeah. Bishop d6.
You just take on
And
f8,
that's
play
it.
rook c1. This is the most straightforward plan you could ask for.
Yeah, and that's it. It's very difficult. We're informed that knight c5 was a better move here because the queen is hanging. Bishop cannot take the pawn on d6, and after queen b6, queen d7 was the way to fight to hold on the d6 pawn. If queen takes a7, then queen takes c7. But I don't believe that black can escape here.
Even there, I think white's winning. And the best that black will be able to do is sacrifice the knight for the a pawn. So it'll be a bishop for 2 pawns, which can be difficult to win. I don't want to say it's game over, but should probably be a win for white there anyway.
But this is the current position. And Niels is down to 4 minutes. Oh my god, for coming 10 moves. I don't know. I think we will see either a blunder or resignation.
He's been under pressure since as early as move 8 in this game when Jordan played the opening, and he just could never be calm. He never was able to regroup. You're trying to find everything over the board, and Jordan was playing instantly. So Jordan came very well prepared. These lines get sharp in the Sicilian, and credit to Team Jordan. His, of course, his play, but his seconds, all the hard work they're putting in to come up with these strong opening ideas. It's leading him to win this game and almost certainly tie for first place in the Tata Steel Masters.
Indeed, impressive performance from Jordan van Vereest. He came today with white pieces, played an amazing opening, and just I would say that won this game at home.
Yes, and Niels, I think he moved his queen. He did. He got queen d8, and now bishop takes rook. This is what Jordan's going to respond with.
Knight takes and maybe rook c1. How do you even defend this?
You can't. There's just
That
nothing
pisses
you
off.
can do. So we actually could see a resignation in just a handful of moves at this point. Jordan, he's doing the smart thing. He has over an hour on his clock. He doesn't need to rush. He knows he's in a winning position. He's going to take that rook, but whether or not he wins in the next 5 minutes or in the next 50 minutes makes no difference as long as he wins this game.
Indeed, let's take a look at Fabiano's game. We have Fabiano against Ariantari with black pieces, tripled pawns, but great chances to attack. G3, knight f7, knight g2, c6 was played, and after bishop d2, bishop c7, queen c2. I like the way Fabi is playing. He does not really hurry. He lets the opponent to develop, but he has clear plan in his mind. c6, bishop c7, and then knight d6. Dropping this pawn is not an option, I guess, for black. But black can play rook e2 right now. Or queen f5, probably not.
I like queen f5 because you fix your pawn structure in the event of the queen trade. But of course, any time we trade pieces off the board, we're like, do we have enough left to actually win the game? It may look good, but can we win? And the same question with queen f5 comes to mind with rook e2, because the rook e2, white can play rook e1 and try to trade rooks. So I guess, Sobiko, I'm going to ask you, which pieces do you think Fabiano wants to trade if he has to trade some?
I would like that he. I think that he does not mind as it is now. He would not like to trade any pieces, but if he is forced to, I would probably take rooks
and leave the queens on.
And queens on, or maybe the queens. Yeah, probably the queens. If we take the rooks, then the queen is still so tricky for white.
Yeah, I think that it's just a tough question to answer, and it's why I asked you, so I didn't have to answer myself. I didn't know what to say. It seems like black is better no matter what, but just having enough material left to win, and we see Jordan and Niels.
Let's go back to Jordan, because Niels is under 3 minutes, 2 minutes on his clock right now. Rook c1, just playing g6, but without any enthusiasm.
Yeah, you haven't had really any moves for black for a long time now. You just take this rook on f8. It forces the knight to capture on f8, and the rook's coming in. The rook on a7 stuck. I don't know which is going to happen first, the checkmate or the rook being lost.
Yeah, we can stay here for a while, because 2 minutes for 10 moves, and this position, it's just impossible.
No, this is, yeah, it's hopeless. And
Is hopeless.
I'm just trying to even figure out if there's a way for White to make some kind of mistake to not win the game. And one is maybe a back rank checkmate if you move your rook away from c1 and there's a check on the first rank, but that's obviously not going to happen. And without that, I'm out of ideas. I don't see how Black can even hope to survive.
Yeah, maybe we can stay with the camera on Jordan's game, but let's go check Alireza's game on analysis board. This is the current position after bishop f4, knight d6 was played indeed, and queen e3. Such a nice move. Look at this, going away from the pin and putting pressure on e6 pawn. Alireza's chances are looking great.
Wow, that's a fantastic move because the knight on d6 is kind of pinned, or if you try to take on f5 or something like that, the c7 pawn is under attack. It's much more important to break through along the e file with this e6 pawn. And does Black have no good response here? Knight c4 comes to mind just to kick the queen off of e3, but once the queen moves out of the way, c7 is under threat once more. So I think that Roddick's in big trouble.
Yeah, I agree with you. Radix is in big, big trouble. Uh, Knight c4. It's such a complicated positions. No captures yet, but White's pieces are so active. Black is still in the center, and the pressure on e6 pawn is just unbearable.
And how quickly this became advantageous for Alireza. He deserves praise from move 3 of this game, going for a fighting position. And he went for f4, he went for f5 ideas, which look strong because they create an attack, but also weaken some of the squares in his position. And yet, here he is, 15 moves into the game with an overwhelming advantage, and the clock situation favors him. He is a speed demon, we know, in online speed chess, as well as over the board speed chess. But Roddick, 21 minutes under that, and it's much more difficult to play Black. He actually could lose this game in the very near future.
Yeah, 15 moves just, but it's very dangerous position for Radek. Good news for Alireza though, because he needs a win today. He is in a must-win situation. As we see, Jordan van Foreest is having great position already. So bishop d6, g6 was played, but yeah. Jordan is taking his time. He can take as much time as he wants. He has almost an hour on the clock, and he should take it easy.
Right. And for Ali Reza, he's rooting for other people to lose. And that's the nature of these things is even if you're good friends with somebody, you say, hey, can you just do me a favor today? Can you not win your game? In fact, can you lose your game? That way I get to finish in first place. And between Fabiano, Jordan, Alireza, and Anish, they all came to play for this final round. We love Jordan's position. He's going to win for sure. Alireza looks like he's on his way there. And also Fabiano has a promising position against Ariantari from the Black side. So everyone
Indeed.
was ready for this final round.
Indeed, all of them have very nice positions, nice chances. Let's check on Anish's game because b4, b5, b6 happened, Robert. So it is b4, queen c6, b5, queen c5, and b6. Interesting to see what is the follow-up for White, because now, first of all, Black has to decide either to go to b8 or to d8.
Wait a second. This actually looks really bad for Anish all of a sudden because if you go bishop b8, your
Yeah.
bishop is stuck and it's not getting in the game. Just like Niels's rook, that bishop is not really a bishop. It may look like one, it may still move like one, but it's not getting out. And he plays the move because while it looks bad now, at some point he may have the move d5 available to him, or much more likely, in my opinion, it kind of does nothing. He says, my bishop defends the d6 pawn. I will bring my rook over to c8 at some moment. And then how are you going to beat me? how are you actually going to turn this position from one that looks good for white because the bishop is stuck to one where you're creating threats and pushing for a win?
Yeah, I agree with you. It does look very good, but White has two problems to face. What's next? How he's going to break through if I just stand?
It's such a looks can be deceiving position because I just saw Anish. He goes for a little stroll. He looks actually perfectly at home right now. And I guess it is true that his position, while that bishop doesn't look very promising, there's no easy path forward for David here. And he can shuffle, Anish can, rook c8, king g8, and then the entire burden is on David to find some kind of winning plan.
Yeah, indeed. Only thing I see for White is just to try to get c5 in at the right moment. I don't know, rook, maybe queen a3 with rook c1 and c5. But at this moment, it's not possible because the c4 pawn is hanging. If you play rook c1, then queen a3 would be more difficult to play after rook c8. I don't know. It's very strange position.
It is. It's an unusual one for sure, but I do think that despite my visceral reaction, I really don't like this bishop on b8. The more I actually use that brain of mine, that sometimes does work, it seems that black's position is perhaps impenetrable. It doesn't look nice to me, but that's what these super grandmasters do is they say it's fine for me to just shuffle around. And in many ways, that's engine-like behavior because
Yeah.
uh, we struggle to sit and kind of do nothing, to just wait for our opponent to come up with a plan. But Anish has seemingly figured this out that there's not so much that David can accomplish here, despite how promising the position looks.
Indeed, and we have here all four games, very important ones going on. I see that Fabiano decided to play queen takes queen, sorry, not takes, but queen f5, and knight e3 is the response.
Okay, so
But what if
Fabi,
I take and rook e2?
I guess white will be forced to put the rook on d1 and then bring the king over to kick the rook out. So I don't think Fabi wants to trade queens anymore. Like, can he keep the queens on the board with the queen
Yeah,
h5?
probably not.
Like, he can try to go queen h5, knight g5, knight f3, and go for a checkmate. We're talking about the game on the bottom left. Everybody, I know that's probably hard for you all to visualize, but
Yeah.
the discussion we're having is: do you trade queens on c2? But that seems to lessen your winning chances. So queen h5, it just is more active, playing to maybe deliver a checkmate.
I agree with you. Queen c2 might be pleasant from the first side because you get rook e2, but white is not losing this bishop, rook d1, and this bishop is actually a very good piece because it controls knight g5. If black is allowed to play knight g5 right now, then bishop takes g5, rook takes c2. I probably made some blunder because
Yeah, king
Compi is
f1.
going up and down.
Just king f1 to kick the
King
rook
f1.
first and then
Yeah.
get that knight. Yeah.
King f1, and there is no danger of rook d2, knight f3 check anymore, and yeah, knight g5 is not possible. So Fabi should keep the queens on the board and hope for some attack.
Yeah, and the best move after queen h5 is rook e8. Essentially you uncastle. You bring your king to e8 and your rook on h8, and then your rook helps you deliver a checkmate. So it's very difficult to accomplish that, but black has so many ideas here. The rook on the e file is strong. The knight can go to g5 or to d6, and from d6, that knight can go to e4 or c4. So black has the better position. White's bishop on d2, not that strong, and so Fabi should play queen h5 here.
Yeah, indeed. And in Alireza's position, Radoslav Wojtaszek went indeed knight c4. Now this queen will go away, but yeah, queen d3 won't happen, I think, because then knight d6, or black has a chance to play another move, but queen d3, I'm sure that won't be the move, just stepping into the pin once again. Where should the queen go?
my first reaction is some kind of queen f3 to keep my queen in line on the f file, maybe open the board up. But I just I'm trying to figure out, does black even have a response to save the c7 pawn, or is black just going to have to castle kingside and give up that pawn regardless? And it's a messy position. No pieces have been traded at this point in time, and I think that honestly both sides have chances here. If you go queen f3, the b2 pawn is hanging later, so perhaps I castle, and then once all is defended, I can maybe I'll give the c7 pawn to win the b2 pawn. It's a complete mess.
Yeah, it is. But I do like white's chances.
Yeah, I think that Alireza is doing well here, and it's the kind of sharp position that he tends to thrive in. He is down on the clock, so I was talking about Roddick's clock before. Now it's Alireza who is down a couple minutes, and it's only move 15. So
Yeah,
they're going to be making moves on the increment.
indeed. Like they are both under 20 minutes and only move 25 moves to go. Oh, I don't know. Getting exciting.
Getting exciting, getting scary, getting tactical. Just I'm trying to figure this out, and I think that Alireza, he should like his chances here, but one inaccuracy and the position could collapse for either player.
Yeah, for either player, that's very true. Do we have look at Jordan's position? He just plays h3.
What a decision! He's just sort of tightening the screws and making sure there's no
Yeah.
back rank checkmate, and just saying to Niels, your pieces are stuck. There, you don't have a plan.
Yeah, doesn't even take the exchange. He doesn't want it. He lets him to escape. Only 1 minute and 25 seconds on the clock for Niels Grandelius, but a lost position. Rook c7. Everything looks so good here.
Right. You have the rook trapped on a7 that's going to remain trapped, and yeah, rook c7 is just a good move for white, and yeah.
Yeah, this looks very bad for Niels, especially that he has 9 moves to reach the first time control and only 1 minute 25 seconds on the clock.
And he also might get checkmate in the dark squares, right?
Yeah.
There's a possibility that the bishop will, after rook c7, the bishop comes to e5, and the king on g8's in a world of trouble.
Yeah, Jordan's position is looking great from the start of the game. Shall we just check on Magnus's game? If it's wait, oh, there we go. Rook c7 is played.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
And this is Magnus's game and analysis board.
okay, so Magnus remains up the exchange, and his rook's on h4, protecting the d4 pawn. He's offering a trade of knights, and Maxime's position is also quite frozen, just like Niels's.
Yeah, I like the way Jordan is playing so fast. He's using that Niels has 1 minute on the clock, and yeah, he's just winning this one. Rook c7, knight f6, and bishop e5. Checkmate is coming probably soon. Queen c5, queen e3, queen h6. Blah.
If you can spend all the time, and bishop takes f6 is an immediate threat. Queen c5 checkmates the rook on a7. So it's a position where even if you don't win the rook, you can go for checkmate against the king. Even if you don't checkmate, that rook is trapped. Tactically, black's position is hopeless. And yeah, Niels, this one's going to come to its conclusion very soon. Knight e4 was just played, and does queen b6 just win the rook over there?
Yeah. Queen b6 or anything actually. Rook d7. I don't know anything. Queen b6 looks very nice though.
I guess the one hope that black can have is some kind of like queen g5, and if you're not prepared for that move, maybe the queen gets in and there are some checks. It doesn't look like it, but I'm just trying to come up with any semblance of counterplay for Niels here, because if you give Niels a free move, I'm trying to figure out what that move is. None of his pieces can do anything.
Even queen b2 looks very nice here with the idea of bishop h8.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's everything is just good.
Okay, we'll have a look how he continues the last moments of this game, I believe, because it looks so winning. You cannot mess it up.
And Jordan, he's locked in here. He knows that the game is over in a couple moves. He just is trying to figure out the most precise way forward, and that's what chess players do. Even when 10 different moves win, and maybe not too difficult to win regardless of what you play, you want to find the most approved move. So that way, when it does matter, you're as sharp as possible.
I agree with you. Niels just played knight e4. Now it's about Jordan. Do we have any updates in other games? Let me just have a look.
Well,
Oh,
whoa, yeah,
queen d3 was played in Alireza's game.
yeah, I noticed that too. And then Radek switched his move. That is very interesting by Wojtaszek. He must have seen a line that he didn't like, and so
Yeah.
he regretted his decision. And then, given a second chance, he changed his mind.
I still like White's position though, but bishop d6 looks better, yeah.
Right, and he could have done it the first time, but he played knight d6, and then when the queen went to e3, right, he hopped his knight back to c4, and there must have been a different move than queen to d3 that worried Radek, because otherwise he would have repeated moves and just try to split the point with a repetition. So queen d3 perhaps was something Radek hoped for, so he could fix his mistake, and now he played bishop to d6.
Surprising. I'm very surprised that Firuza went for queen d3. Probably he thought that he would win some time with knight d6, but yeah, there we go. I think Jordan just played queen b6 or queen c6 even.
Oof.
Oh my god.
And rook c8's
Rook
next
c8.
move. Yeah, this is...
I think we will see resignation soon.
And Niels only has a minute, so it's
Yeah.
not like he has time to figure much out here. Not that there is a lot to look into, but rook c8 hits the queen. The rook on e8 is now under attack a second time. The bishop on b7 defends a6, prevents rook a8 from being played because you can capture it. So it's...
Yeah, this is just... Oh, look at this. Rook f8.
And so
It's
rook
so
c8,
so sad, Black's position.
I mean, look at Niels' reaction. Yeah, he's in disbelief. He's just shaking his head. How could I find myself in this situation here? And rook c8, after that move, you can play bishop b8 to trap that rook over there. Bishop d4 right now traps the rook. There's little...
Nothing. Absolutely nothing that Black can do.
Yeah, and
Impressive game by Jordan van Foreest, who, if he wins this game, and most likely he will in a couple of minutes, he will guarantee himself a tiebreak unless Anish Giri wins.
right. So he will finish with the amazing score of 8.5 out of 13. That is a +4 score for one of the lower rated players in the field. But Jordan van Foreest, he rises to the occasion in Vikings, second year in a row. Last year, he finished, I believe, in something like 4th place. Really great showing that year. And now a 1.5 better if he wins this game, which he will. And he's crossing 2,700. He's proving his might in such a field. And we had Vichy on him, the former world champion, talking about how impressive it is that Jordan has been able to take that step. Some people have the style where they're always taking risk and they win some great games and then they lose in some other games because they're taking too much risk and not taking the precaution necessary. Jordan continues to take risks, but he's minimized the situations where he himself gets in trouble. He has lost 0 games in this tournament, a 13-round brutal event against many of the world's top players.
That's indeed impressive. He is about to play the move. The very bad news for Niels is that after rook c8, he cannot even play queen g5 because then if queen g5, rook takes, and queen c8 check. And I don't know, there should be mate somewhere.
There's
He should go queen e7 and now f3. Oh my god.
and then bishop d6. Oh my, yeah, everything is just a problem. Even if you trade queens, the rook on a7 is still and you'll win the rook. So there's no universe where black escapes this.
No. This game will finish pretty soon, I'm completely sure. Do you even think that it will reach the first time control?
No, no, I think that we could even see a resignation after White's next. We won't. Niels will play on Forbidden. I think that's good, especially for spectators, because there are many games where people resign, and I've had friends who newer players like, wait, why did that person resign? There's, all the material's even, and then you have to explain. Oh well, there's nothing you can do. So Bishop d4 was played. This is very clear. Now the rook on a7 is under attack. The only way to defend it is queen to
give
b8.
It back either with rook a8 or queen b8.
I think queen b8, at least it keeps the game going.
Yeah. 46 seconds for Niels. Oh my god.
And I think he will play queen to b8. Just no other moves here. And now we look at those dark squares and the black king. Your f3 move might just trap the knight, and then the queen gets in.
What did he play?
It looked like queen to b8.
Queen b8.
Yes, queen b8 was played. I like f3 now.
I love f3, yeah. Wow. This knight will go and that's it. Then even queen d6, queen e5 at mate.
Right. So f3, knight g3. That's the way. Knight e2 check. That's the one hope that you can possibly have here, is if your opponent blunders a fork, which, well, Jordan will not. So.
How many games of the day did Jordan van Foreys play in this tournament?
A bunch. I haven't kept track, but he has had many of the most memorable games from this. And Vishy was saying that the tournament kind of started slowly for many of the players, but every round it feels like Jordan has had exciting matches, and he plays f3.
And f3 is on the board. Where does the knight go?
G3 by default. I think that no matter if you anywhere else you go, the knight gets trapped. So
yeah,
knight G3 seems to be the way. And you know what Jordan might do? He might take on a7. This is like how bad black's position is. And after queen takes, queen c5, and then you can't stop the a pawn.
Oh, okay. That's true.
Like, you can trade the queens off the board and the a pawn promotes.
He took something. He took
rook takes a6, okay. And the bishop took back. So now it's an extra piece for 2 pawns, and those bishops are just monsters.
Yeah. Queen b4, I guess.
Okay. That makes sense. So queen b4, hitting the bishop. You would love to take that bishop off the board.
He's threatening some checks.
Queen e1 to g3. That would be a repetition as well. So if you move your bishop a little carelessly, there could be some kind of drawing pattern.
Yeah.
I would play bishop e5.
Just bishop e5. And queen e1. King h2, right?
Yes, and the bishop
Then
covers
knight
that.
f2.
Oh, I didn't see that.
But there's one check.
But I didn't see that. So that's good to point out that that kind of thing you overlook, and sometimes it goes from a win to even a loss. But you're right, that is only one check on h1, but I should be more careful.
Probably I can even...
Oh, then the bishop's hanging.
Oh, bishop's hanging.
See?
I can't play
See,
that.
we're thinking now like, oh, it can be trickier than we initially anticipated.
Yeah, but it's so annoying, no? When you're winning and somehow very enthusiastically your opponent just sacrifices something back and then queen comes into the game.
Yeah, this now is actually quite tricky, but Jordan has 45 plus minutes to figure it out. So the fact that he was able to play so rapidly in the opening because of his great preparation, now he has time when it's getting a little more complicated to say, can I play bishop e5 and let that queen e1, knight f2 happen? Should I play some other move that may keep more of my pieces together? I
Yeah,
think bishop e5 should work based on the fact that queen h1 is only a single check, as you mentioned, but it just needs to be calculated.
yeah. Jordan has a lot of time to figure this out. He won't slip this win away. And we have some updates in the game of Fabiano against Ariantari. It looks also good for the American.
Wow, this looks
Queen h5 was played. Then knight g2, queen f5, knight e3, queen h5, knight g2. And of course, Fabiano doesn't want a move repetition here. He goes bishop d8, rook f1, knight d6, and the knight came to e4.
I think that Bobby he repeated once, and then that way he gained more time with a 30-second increment, and he got closer to the time control. So it's only moved 26, 13 minutes for Fabi. It's a complicated position. At least he is closer to reaching move 40, and his position is so good here. The knight on e4 is a great piece. You can have to watch out if you are Aryan for some kind of pawn g5, rook e6, rook h6, going for a checkmate along the h file. That's a very clear idea. King f7 also, just to bring the rook to h8. Maybe that's an option as well. And yeah, I like Fabi's position, and I think that Aryan's in some trouble here.
Yeah, I agree with you. It looks like a big trouble to me.
Yes, I
There
think
is no counterplay.
right, and if you defend passively or just shuffle around, Black has this clear plan to break through in the position. So you might have to make a move like c4 for Atari,
Yeah.
but as soon as you push that pawn to c4, your d4 pawn becomes more of a target, and are you really going to take on d5, and maybe the Black queen will take? So it just seems like that may be what's required. It just doesn't seem that fun.
Indeed, and only both players are actually under 20 minutes. 13 minutes for Fabiano Caruana, while Ariantari is down to 20 minutes. He just played a move, and it is c4.
Yes, that's
Searching for some counterplay.
right. He's not trying necessarily to be aggressive. He's just trying to play defense by creating some new threats and some new avenues to work with. And Fabi, his position has looked nice or remained nice, and he should be happy that the d4 pawn is now lacking a defender. The pawn on c3 kept that d4 pawn safe and sound. Now a timely bishop f6, things like that, bishop b6, depending on what happens, the d4 pawn's in trouble.
And in Jordan's game, bishop e5 was played, queen e1, king h2, knight f2, but then Jordan won't drop the piece, so e5.
Yes, he will not drop the piece in e5. He will not get checkmated because queen h1, as you point out, is just a single check. He needs to be careful, right? Just take
Yep.
think, figure it out. But he is up a piece with just two pawns, and very importantly, Black's king is probably less safe than White's king. It just needs some time for White to develop that attack.
Yeah, Jordan is just few moves away from the win. He just made his 39th move, and he will have, if this game finishes after move 40, he will have more time on the clock than the starting position.
Yeah, that's true. And well, here Neil's thinking he has to move his knight, otherwise he loses that piece as well. He is working. I mean, knight f2 seems like the only try.
Yeah, knight
And
f2. He will play knight f2, and 10 seconds for Niels, but he makes it on 8 seconds. He's just one move away from the time control, but the position is still bad.
Yes, I'm just trying to think of what the most accurate move is for white. Queen at c3 comes to mind because I would love to trade queens, and
Yeah.
your knight is maybe trapped as well. But I'm trying to help my king out, and I don't want to allow queen h1 check and then queen back to e1. My bishop on e5 is hanging, so queen c3 does everything at the same time. It offers the queen trade, it defends the bishop on e5. It also tries to threaten checkmate along the dark squares. So
What about bishop c3?
bishop c3 is also pretty good,
Yeah.
I would say. And the one thing though is like bishop c3, queen h1 check, king g3, and like queen g1. Like, what if knight h1 check happens next? And maybe
Yeah.
maybe after queen c3 the same problem exists, so it's not actually that clean. And that's what Niels is going for.
Queen
But
c3 is played. I think queen h1, and we reach the first time control, but with a lost position for
So-
Niels.
so Niels, I think you have to play queen h1 check, otherwise you have no attack, and you can't trade. You definitely can't trade queens. The position is completely hopeless. So he did, in fact, move his queen to h1. The king is going to g3, and now queen g1 is what I expect to be
Yeah.
played. And I think though that there's no checkmate for black. So in the event of queen g1, now white just plays rook c8 and goes and checkmates the black king. So it looks a bit scary, but after queen g1, the one check you have is knight h1. So rook c8, and if you play this knight to h1 check, I think I drew king to h4,
Yeah,
and you're
probably.
running out
Queen
of
f2 check.
g3.
Oh god.
I don't recommend most people play like this, but this is not my king. So if it gets checkmated, I'd say, okay, let's take the moves back. But
Yeah, we'll just put it back.
but we don't want to just play scared chess. Like, we understand that the king might have to go on a bit of a walk here, but if there's no checkmate for black, white might as well play rook c8 and go checkmate black's king, which is not safe.
Yeah, and we did reach the first time control in the game of Jordan van Foreest against Niels Grandelius. Jordan seems to have a winning position, but still a few moves away from the resignation. Probably we'll take a quick break and we'll be back soon. Welcome back, everyone. This is the last round of Tata Steel Chess Tournament, and everything is ahead. No clear standings so far. Jordan van Foreest is winning his game. Let's take a look at the current standings and check the games later. Anish Giri is half point ahead of everybody. Jordan van Foreest, Alireza Firouzja, and Fabiano Caruana are sharing second place with 7.5 out of 12. But all games look really good. Jordan will probably win. Alireza also had a good position, and Fabiano as well. What do you think? What's gonna happen, Robert?
Well, they're approaching time trouble in some of these games, so anything can happen. It's complicated for sure. I think that Jordan will win, and it seems like his tiebreaks are very good. Before the round, they had him in second place ahead of Alireza and Fabiano, and with the win, he should likely find his way towards the playoff. And if we do get multiple players tied for first, if Anish does not win the game, then, as we mentioned earlier, the first tiebreak is mutual result. These players have not defeated one another, so they will all have the same mutual result. Then it's the SB score, which is you get your opponent score for the people you've beaten. So if you beat somebody who scores 10 points, you get 10 points for your tiebreak. And if you draw, you get half of their points. So if you draw somebody who gets 10 points, which nobody is getting, you get 5 points. So that's how that works. And you can see the rest of the information here. But so we go, the games, they're fascinating. We have a lot of life left throughout all the boards here. Where should we focus our attention?
Wow, so many things are going on. First thing that catches my eye is the game of Alexander Donchiko against Andrei Yasipenko. It seems that Black is having a healthy pawn on, yeah, let's put it on the board. Just give me a second. I need to find it. It's over here. This is the current position.
Wow.
Healthy A5 pawn.
Yeah, we looked at this earlier and we were saying how there's much more life to that position than it just being a complete draw, even though there's even material and there wasn't that much going on in that moment. But somehow Yasipenko was able to win a pawn. Now he is going to try to push his pawns and promote. So this would be a nice way to end the tournament for Yasipenko. He can't finish in first place, but he will finish very near the leaders.
Yeah, amazing performance by an 18-year-old. Let's go to Magnus's game. He seems to be pretty close to a win. Look at this. He just moved the d5 pawn, reached the first time control, and Maxim resigns.
Wow, what a time to switch to that game. Magnus Carlsen finished the tournament with a huge victory over Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. No, he will not be thrilled about his tournament performance, but as I said earlier, he's going to be happy to beat one of his main rivals these days, just to send that message. I may not have my best tournament, but I beat you head to head. So if we play in the World Championship match, our recent history is in Magnus's favor.
Yeah, Magnus is the first one today to finish the game. He finished the tournament. He's not in fight for the first place, but +2 anyway for the world champion is good because the tournament was not going so well for him. Winning the last game is always nice, and Maxim had a very, very tough tournament here in Vaikanse, but we know that candidates are ahead, so his whole focus is on that tournament.
That's true, and we talked with Vichy Anand about this, and that's what it comes down to for Maxime. Will he be able to play for a world championship match? And Fabiano Caruana did poorly in Vaikanse, and then he won the Cannes tournament and ultimately drew all 12 games with Magnus Carlsen in the 2018 World Championship. So maybe Maxime will take one out of Fabi's playbook, have a bad tournament in Vaikanse, not intentionally, obviously, but struggle there and then see success in the candidates.
Let's take a look at Alireza's game because I see that the current position looks very complicated from the small board, but let's take a look deeply after Queen d3, Bishop d6 was played, knight takes, Bishop e5, knight e4. That's good news for black. I don't know if it works now or not, but the knight is on e4. Queen a3, queen d7, c4, c6, opening up the position. F takes, c takes, d5, and not c takes d5, but knight takes d5. Bishop g2, knight d2, rook fc1, rook f8, and knight f3. What's going on?
At first, this was bravery from Alireza, and now it's just courage from Radek Wojtaszek to play in this manner, to put your knight on d2, and that knight, was close to getting trapped, and yet black is right in this game.
Sorry, Robert, we have the interview of world champion Magnus Carlsen.
Magnus, congratulations. Slowly but surely you pushed him away today, or didn't you?
I don't know if it was slowly or surely or anything, but yeah, I think he went for a plan there in the middle game, which probably wasn't very good. And after he sacked the exchange, I think I was considerably better. Spent a lot of time there, not really figuring out the way, but then I think finally the way I chose with 92 was pretty nice, giving up another pawn, but eventually winning based on domination.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another victory, but as I probably know, you're not satisfied with the result.
No, the overall performance was well, shameful, to be honest. There were really very few moments of redemption in the tournament. It was really quite poor, and have to do better in the future, because last year I kind of had a difficult tournament as well, and was really hoping to do better, and it just never really got going at all here. So I mean, the only silver lining for me is that I won 2 of my last 5 games, and so I mean, at least I salvaged a plus score, but obviously it's nowhere near good enough.
And do you have some kind of explanation?
No, I mean, I started out feeling pretty good at the start of the tournament, and then when I won the first game, then I thought this was going to be pretty good, to be honest. But after that, I felt like I made probably some poor opening choices in a couple of games, and I didn't get much from them, and basically against Duda, as I've said before, that was horrible, and Yesipenko was there were just no flow to the play, and just way too many blunders, but okay, it's better to have a terrible tournament and score +2 than what happened to Maxim, for instance. So, I mean, I shouldn't stand there and complain too much, but I certainly have a lot to improve on right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
World champion Magnus Carlsen is not a happy camper here, but that's how high the stakes are for him. He +2, not a bad result, but for world champion, it's really bad.
And that's just how good he is. And I think that we often take for granted how strong Magnus Carlsen is. He finishes +2. That means he won 3 games, he lost just 1, and he drew the rest. And yet that's a bad result for him. When for anyone else in the field, that would be a very good result. So that's just how high his rating is, how strong he's been over the years, and he's happy the tournament is over, it seems like.
And look at the line. We were looking at Robert in Jordan van Vereest game. It's on the board. The king is on h4, and afterwards, if queen f2 check, just let's put it on the board, g3, there is nothing that black can do. Rook f8 and queen takes c8 is a big problem.
Yes, and this position looks a little familiar to me. I was saying, hey, let's go on that journey with the king, and it's working out because you can't just mate that king with
Yeah.
your queen and your knight. White's bishop on e5, the power of the bishop, it takes away the g7 escape square from black's king and protects g3 to save white's king, and this is just a straightforward win at this point. It's going to be checkmate soon.
I agree with you. This is the current position. We can stay with live board and live camera on Jordan's game. Meanwhile, we can take a look at Alireza's game because it was so interesting for me. What happened there? E4. So we left it at knight f3, knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, and look at this. King f7. Artificial castle, yeah? With king g8.
Yeah, the king.
E4, knight b4, queen e3, king g8, and rook c3.
And this looks like we had the most normal game of all time because the position
Yes.
is totally reasonable, but it's not what this game was. There were a
No.
lot of strange things, at least atypical things that happened, and we've reached a position where all is normal. White has the bishop pair, should be slightly better, but the knight on b4 has that outpost.
Both players are in time trouble. 6 minutes for Alireza Firuza and 5 for Radoslav Wojtaszek. They are still 11 moves away from the first time control. A lot might happen in this game. Let's quickly check on Anish's game if something happened. So we had here, we left it somewhere here. After b6, rook c8, rook f7, they are just shuffling around. But now the queens are off the board.
They are indeed, and the question is still, how does white make progress? And black's plan will be king g8, king f7, king e7, and I don't see the breakthrough, but black's bishop on b8 remains bad. The knight on d2 protects e4 and c4, so white will be able to push this game with zero risk whatsoever, and Anish will have to prove sturdy defense.
Indeed, Anish has to prove that this is nothing for white. He does have enough time for that. They are 2 moves away just from time control. Knight d2, rook f8. Rook was not doing much, but we have endgame here. What about just f3, king f2, king e3, king d3, and then to make sure that this knight gets better place?
Just have to watch out for d5 from black. At some moment, you may have to sacrifice a pawn to free that bishop up. And that pawn on a5, that's a dark square. And if that bishop can go to d6 and b4, well, all of a sudden, black says, I'll give you a pawn in the center, but I'll win a5. And if a5 falls, b6 will also drop. That's going to be something that David has to keep a really serious eye on.
Yeah, and back to Jordan's game, because g5 was played here, but this does not save the game because white can even take this pawn or just go king h5.
I think the king is going to land on h6. That's king takes g5.
King h6, and then just remove this bishop and queen g7, yeah?
Yes, and king takes g5. Black's going to try f6 check. Please take me on f6. Take with the bishop, and then queen takes g3 check happens, and that king is made, right? So instead of taking on f6, that king will go to h6 there, right? After you give the check, you don't take on f6, you bring your king to h6, and you deliver checkmate.
Yeah, you can either do it with king g5 or king h5, and then after f6, king h6, taking... Where's the mate? Rook takes.
Just
Queen.
can I even play queen takes e5? Is that possible?
Just like this. That's terrible. Even if queen takes e5 works here, and if this game, if it happens like this, then how many times Jordan sacrificed in this game?
Enough.
Enough times.
Yeah, enough times, and it's going to work out. And that king on g8 is just getting checkmated.
Yeah, we are few moves away from resignation, I think, from Nils Grandelius. We can take a look at Fabiano's game, Ariantari against Fabiano Caruana.
Oh, so much has
Position is
changed.
getting simplified. I think White is improving his chances.
Yeah, uh, and the pawns in the G file remain very weak. So if the queens get off the board, then all of a sudden White is doing well here. But the D4 pawn on the dark square, you'll try to go and attack that if you're Fabiano.
But just 1 minute and 50 seconds for Fabiano Caruana, and they are still 5 moves away from first time control. C5 has been just played. It's a big decision because then I'm getting rid of the weak D4 pawn.
But you are getting your bishop on a really nice diagonal,
yeah.
staring at the knight on E3 and behind it the pawn on F2. So Bobby's just trying to go for some attacking chances.
Yeah, indeed. Very complicated position. And in Alireza's game, we have not had much moves.
Yeah, this.
And we have an information that if Jordan wins his game and Anish draws, then no matter what happens on other boards, Jordan and Anish will play the playoffs.
Okay, so Jordan, after he finishes his game, I'm sure we'll get him for an interview. He'll be all smiles, and then he'll be like, "Wait, I have to go prepare. My turn is not
I
over
need
yet."
to prepare.
Yeah, you think, "Oh, it's the last round. Just that, put all my energy into the last game." And then, no, just kidding. You have to play a blitz match for the title. That will be exhilarating. It will be fun for us, but for him, that's going to be a lot of work.
And the question is, can he use Anish's opening against Anish?
Well, if they do play against one another, it becomes uncomfortable. Playing your second is never fun. I've talked to many people about this just because they know your repertoire perhaps even better than you do. And you're like, well, which opening do I play? They know them all. And it just isn't the easiest experience, but at the same time, they're professionals. So if you have to play your second, you just say, for today, we are mortal enemies and we'll be back to being buds tomorrow.
Yeah, and indeed for Dutch fans, the playoff of Jordan van Vereest and Anish Giri is probably a dream come true. The gold stays in the Netherlands and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yes, although Anish will have plenty of work left to secure a draw in his game. That one still is tense, but we see the king on G5. Jordan, he's ready for this game to conclude. He will finish the best tournament of his life by far. And we see, was that F6 check? That looks like F6.
Yes.
And here it
King
comes.
H6.
Here it comes.
H6.
King H6, there it is.
Nice.
And Jordan gets the king to H6. That black king on G8 has had not very many moves all game. That's been the story of this game. Great preparation, and then black's pieces being trapped. And here it's going to be a checkmate.
Impressive performance by young Dutchman Jordan van Vereest. Look at him. He's just waiting for Niels to resign.
Yes. And Niels himself is probably waiting for Niels to resign because he's been struggling through this position for a long time. But maybe he'll allow a checkmate. And that is very nice when I've allowed people to checkmate me because, it's for everybody else's benefit. I still lost the game whether the checkmate happens or not. So some players do allow a checkmate. It's
and he
show
took
grace.
on E5. The last few moves here, so we'll stay here. F takes E5, queen takes E5. Do you think queen takes E5 or rook takes F8? Both should be completely winning.
Queen takes E5.
In style, yeah?
Yes. And you're threatening queen G7 mate. You're also doing queen takes E6 check, which will lead to rook takes F8 mate. And the king on H6, it does its job. It's a hero.
Yep.
He takes an E5.
Checks again. When are you going to resign?
Yeah, he looks at him like, all right, do you have anything? The answer is no. And Anish?
Look at that Anish's face.
Yeah, he doesn't need to look at this one anymore to know what's happening here. And Jordan van Foreest, he is keeping his composure for now, but internally, he must be jumping for joy. And we saw Yesipenko early in the tournament. He beat Magnus Carlsen, and just the smile on his face. That's something to remember from this tournament. And Jordan, well, this is the best performance of his life.
Yeah.
He's crossing 2,700. He will almost certainly finish in a tie for first place. And you couldn't ask for a better start to 2021. And his professional chess career is only getting started as well.
And he resigns, and Jordan van Foreest with impressive, amazing performance, amazing games, wins the last round, making sure that if Anish draws his game, then he will have to play tie breaks. Look at him, how happy he is. He cannot stop smiling.
Yeah, and Niels is a great sport, and I'm sure he's
Yeah.
congratulating Jordan on not just this game, but the tournament overall. And for Jordan van Forest, he makes his way over 2,700. He is a super grandmaster officially. He is going to tie for first in the
Yeah.
Tata Steel Masters, and he has a chance to win the whole thing if we get to that playoff and he can play some good speed chess. And Jordan, what a performance by him.
So will he check Anish's game now?
Will he check Anish's game?
Let's see, let's see.
Yeah, he is probably going to go do an interview and then eat and get ready for more chess.
Before the interview, he's checking Anish's game or not? No.
Nah. The thing is, he's likely to have a playoff no matter what. If Anish somehow loses and Alireza wins or
Yeah.
Fabiano wins, he is all likely going to have another game to play. So he's going to leave the tournament hall. We see him slowly exiting, and he must be just thrilled. And that's a huge chess fan, by the way. It's not just Jordan. His brother Lucas is also a grandmaster. I believe their younger sister is a really talented junior player as well. So it's a whole chess family, a lot to be excited about in the Van Forest household.
Unbelievable performance. Already second year in a row, and it's even better now than the last year. Last year, Jordan impressed everybody with his performance. He took the fourth place, but now he is most likely sharing the first place and has to play the playoffs unless Anish Giri wins the game.
And when we started this tournament, if you said somebody under 2,700 to start at the rating of the start tournament is going to finish in a tie for first, who would have thought Niels Grandelius? He won his first two games. He was 3.5 out of 5. He was playing marvelous chess. He beat Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in a sparkling game. And then, unfortunately for him, this was a long tournament. He would have loved the tournament to end after 5 rounds. Instead, it goes the full 13. He finishes at -1, so 6 out of 13, which is a strong showing from Niels, but it's going to feel bad when you reflect and you say, what could have been?
I'm wondering, Robert, what are my chances in fantasy chess contest? Because I had Anish Giri and Jordan van Foreest in my team, as well as MVL. And if both players tie for the first place, good day for me, no?
That's true. So I haven't checked because my team was doing so poorly that I try to forget about the contest. So thank you for reminding me of that. My struggles, not just commentating, but as a fantasy selector. And yeah, that's if you pick Jordan and the niche, were faithful to the Dutch, then your fantasy chess team did very well.
Nice, good news. This is Anish's game. They just reached time control. F3, King F7, and King F1. We should also not forget that it is first time Jordan van Foreest reached 2,700 and is in the club of 2,700 now.
And we'll see if he's there to stay. And that has nothing to do with his potential, but there are many players who cross once and then they fall under and they can't quite make it back, or they go well above 2,700 and then have a tough series of events and then drop. So
we have Fabiano Caruana draw?
Oh, draw, yes.
Was not it very good for Fabi?
I think that with the time trouble and with not too many pieces remaining, that Aryan was able to just trade off queens and successfully hold the balance.
Yeah, indeed. Rook. This is the last few moves that happened. Oh, so everything was traded. Great performance by Arian Tari as well, holding Fabiano Caruana, not giving him a chance to tie for the first place. It's only Jordan van Verees who has hopes that Anish won't win his game.
Yeah, Aryan had a very good tournament. He actually was the lowest rated by far, and yet he finished 6 out of 13. So he only lost one more game than he won. He beat Andrei Yesipenko. That was a nice game by the Norway number two. And Tari lost 2 games and won one. That's a pretty stellar showing in his first time playing in the Tata Steel Masters.
Indeed, and let's check Alireza Firouzja's game because he is the only one player left who can tie for the first place. It is very short position, but I love two bishops.
Yes, and 50 seconds for Wojtaszek. It's going to be tough just to make it to move 40.
And there he is, Jordan van Vereest.
Jordan, wow, you have just beaten Niels Grandelius to score an unbeaten 8.5 out of 13, set up a potential playoff, and reach 2700 for the first time in your life. First of all, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, it didn't really get through to me yet. I mean, just finished the game, so it was a really tough game. So I mean, I don't feel too much yet, but I think happiness will come later. Now I'm just relieved I won, and I hope I played a good game.
Well, let's talk about the game. It seemed like another impressive piece of preparation. Did your preparation reach until you were almost in a winning position?
Yeah, I have to give a big shout out to my second, Max Warmerdam, who's sitting over there. We had this position on the board yesterday, this morning, I mean, and I mean, he kind of said like bishop d7 is human move, and then we played around a bit, and we got to this position with queen b8, and I mean, he played c4, and he said like it's slightly better for white according to the engines, but I didn't know the follow-up. So, I mean, in general, it's a very risky line for white, but probably black is better if he knows. But I think in this situation, the line is really very well suited for this game because I wanted to win, and it's really not easy for black to find this way out of this maze of complications.
And of course, Niels was not going down without a fight. How were you managing your nerves during the game?
Yeah, he defended very well, and despite being in time travel, and I mean, I was also quite nervous already before the game, but especially during the game, so it was not easy to calm myself down. I think that's also why I played quite fast, because I mean, it's hard to think when you're a bit nervous. I missed some of his ideas, but in general, it looked like I was in control. I was surprised he played knight d7. I mean, after he gave the piece back, I thought he should play d5, and I don't know what's going on. And then, I mean, after that, my position is very pleasant, let's say, and I mean, he is very hard to move his pieces, and my bishops are basically controlling the board.
And in the end, the king run to finish the game. Did you think of that famous short Timon game?
I saw this idea in a couple of lines, but honestly, I missed g5 check, so this was kind of a shock. I was like, oops, because I missed that king takes g5, f6, and then, I mean, so it wasn't really planned. So, and then I had to go to h6, so kind of lucky that it works out. But I mean, I guess my pieces are so well positioned in general, it should be working out. But yeah, this is really nice to finish it off like that, although it wasn't really planned.
And now let's talk about the tournament situation. It's very likely you are going to play a playoff unless Anish can win his game. Did you check out his game when you were done?
Yeah, I saw he has pretty bad bishop on b8, but I don't know much else. So we'll see how it goes. I think also Firouzja and Caruana are having great chances to win. So I don't know. I mean, just happy to win my game, and I'll see what happens now.
If you go to a playoff, who would you rather play?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm the underdog against everyone, so it's going to be very tough.
And what are you going to do now in preparation of a possible playoff?
I don't know. I'll ask my second for some advice, I guess.
And finally, a few words. How does it feel to cross 2700 here in Wijk aan Zee?
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all as well. I mean, really, it's been a long goal of mine to, get there. And suddenly I gained 30 points in one tournament. That's just crazy and amazing. So, yeah. I mean, that's also very good, of course.
Thank you, Jordan. Congratulations and best of luck in case
Thank
there's
you.
a playoff.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations to Jordan van Foreest for such an impressive performance and impressive results. But Robert, we have such things going on in Alireza's game. Alireza also might join Jordan and he might win this game. He just sacrificed the exchange and look at this position. Let's just put it where we left. It was somewhere here, b6, bishop e2, and suddenly, after queen f7, h5, he's grabbing all the space on the king side. Queen e7, rook c1, queen e8. Black doesn't have a move. Black is stuck, allowing bishop c7, rook d7, bishop b6. It's a pawn. And then knight a2, a fork. But white doesn't care. White just takes the pawn on c6. Knight takes and rook takes c1. I love these two bishops. The pawn on a5 will be lost. It looks like Alireza is going to win.
It's still very complicated though, because white's king isn't exactly that safe either. Right? You have these pawns pushed in front too far. You'd like to push them back so your king feels better about itself. But yeah, this exchange sacrifice was very nice by Alireza, and actually he decided to stay down the exchange because he could have won it back, but that would have allowed black some very concrete play. And so instead, Alireza remains up the exchange. We can dive into the weeds after they reach move 40, but that was move 39, and they both have a minute left.
Yeah, they both have minute left. Rook f7, bishop c5, rook f7, and now the b2 pawn is in danger. But if Alireza manages to consolidate and put pressure on e6 pawn, this bishop on h7 is such a bad piece.
Yeah, that's true. It does hit the e4 pawn, so that isn't the easiest square to protect, but you're right, that bishop h7 is out of play here. And Alireza made his 40th move b3, and Radek has a hard decision to make with a minute and a half left, now less, and it's the 40th move. Mistakes often happen in time trouble on the final move before gaining 50 minutes.
Yeah, and I've also heard a lot of times that the two moves are dangerous. Move 40 and move 41.
Yes. The blunder immediately after time control.
Yes.
It has been a downer for many of us. And well, what is Radek going to play here? Because he doesn't have at least an easy move right this second. I would think about playing queen to b8, but then the e6 pawn is dropped, so queen b8 isn't a good move. And what does that leave him with here?
Maybe king h8, bishop g8.
Maybe, actually.
Desperate.
It seems ridiculous, but king on h8 could be a smart prophylactic move to make sure that at some point maybe I will give up this pawn on e6 and there won't be a pin.
Yeah, and Radoslav is down to 30 seconds, but he makes it. He makes the time control with a rook f c7, and Alireza needs now a win to keep a chance for a playoff.
Yes, and he'll probably need, it sounds like, Anish to lose. So it's when you don't have control of your own destiny, that's not very fun, but he can win this game. And even if he doesn't get to play in the tiebreak, having a three-way tie for first place would be an excellent performance for Alireza.
Because the players reached move 40 here, let's take a look at Anish's game. What's going to happen? Yeah, I don't see the breakthrough.
I don't either, and I think that if white tries too hard to win, that David can lose. And it's not that he's going to lose. It's not like his position is worse. His position is better. But the thing is, when you start playing for a win, and that's your mindset of result-oriented thinking, you maybe miss that black can play d5 at the right moment. And we've been pointing out the a5 pawn on a dark square. If this bishop can jump from b8 to b4 and attack that a5 pawn, then b6 is also in danger. So whenever you advance your pawns the way that David did in this game, later in the game they become weaker and easier to target.
Yeah, and after king e2, what black should wait just, yeah?
Right.
Like rook c8, rook f8, back and forth.
I would even consider rook d8 because the threat is often strong in the execution, just to have you think that I'm going to play d5. And I may very well play d5 at some moment, but just to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, I like that. I like rook d8. All right, let's check Yesipenko's game against Alexander Donchenko. Wow, this is completely winning.
And it's only one extra pawn, but the issue is the king on g2. When you have the fianchetto pawn structure, you probably want to put a bishop on g2, and without that bishop,
Yes.
ideas like knight e1 check are about to happen. Even h3 check is something that black is going to consider to deliver a checkmate. In fact, I see a forced mate that if queen e3, like let's try to save our king by bringing our queen back, there's just knight to e1 check. And after king h3, there's queen g4 mate, and that's
Ooh,
just mate one. And if the king
nice.
ran
And
backwards, knight
king
f3.
g1 doesn't work as well
Yeah,
because
just knight f3 check, and you're going to use the h pawn as a sacrifice, and then you're going to queen f1 checkmate.
oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a win. this place is never a good place for a player who is sitting there. We have this scene on a lonely island. Bad things happen there.
Yeah, it's just been that kind of tournament for Donchenko, and when things go wrong, and when it rains, it pours. It feels like there's nobody out there that understands your predicament, and that's what chess is. It's a game of individual responsibility. You control your own result, and yeah, I feel for Donchenko. He was a last-minute replacement. He's
Yeah.
such a strong player, and he wanted to perform well in this event, and things just never went
But
right for
he
him.
looks happy to me.
He's resigning.
He's waiting for Andre, and he just resigned.
Yeah.
So
And
we have a result in the game of Alexander Donchenko against Andrei Yesipenko. Amazing performance from 18-year-old Andrei Yesipenko as well. He beat Magnus Carlsen in this tournament, and he is sharing fourth place with Fabiano Caruana if Alireza wins.
that sounds right. Yes, he'll be a half point behind the leader, but in a share for fourth place. That's a great performance by him. He beat Magnus Carlsen. That's really, honestly, the biggest thing is Magnus lost one game in this tournament, and it was to Yesipenko, and that's a win he'll remember for the rest of his life. Whereas his score in the tournament, that's something you might forget. The win over Magnus, that's going to be on his wall, framed.
Is he still in 27 plus club?
Yesipenko,
Yesipenko?
I believe with this victory, he goes back above 2,700. Yes, he does.
Yeah. Great performance. Nice way to finish the tournament. You beat world champion Magnus Carlsen, joined the 27 plus club. Unbelievable.
And for Donchenko, it's a very valuable experience. He was able to play against these super grandmasters that he doesn't usually have access to. Donchenko, really a great player. He'll be back. That's what I think. He is a great fighter. He's played well in many different events, and unfortunately for him, his first super grandmaster tournament did not go according to plan. But then again, there was no plan, as he only knew he was playing the day before the tournament started.
Yeah, indeed. We have 3 games remaining. It is Anish Giri versus David Antongiharo, Alireza Firouzja against Radoslav Wojtaszek, and Jan-Krzysztof Duda against Hari Krishna Pentala. This game is still going on, Robert. Duda against Hari Krishna. We thought that this would be over soon, but look at this. I even heard that Pentala had good chances. Duda had good chances to grab huge advantage.
Wow. We looked at it out of the opening. Oh, they'll just make a draw in half an hour.
Yeah.
And they're still going. And who's playing for a win at this point? Black has these double pawns on the king side, so probably not black. But is white really going to be able to use the A pawn as an outside passer and try to distract black's pieces? If I can start running that pawn up the board, black has to focus his energy over to that pawn, and then white will try to make progress on the king side, even though that's where he's down a pawn.
Do you think this is the game that will keep us forever today?
No, I think the playoff will keep us forever because
Yes, that's
that
for sure.
that even when these games are done, we're like, oh wow, that's the end of the round. Oh wait, don't forget, there's going to be a matchup between Jordan van Forest and likely Anish Giri because Anish's position looks holdable, but it's possible that it's Alireza Firouzja instead if Anish happens to lose the game. I don't think Anish is really in looking to win, but that's also a possibility. And then we have no playoff. And then the answer to your question is still no. I don't think it's gonna be the last game keeping
Yeah,
us.
we never know what's gonna happen if Anish gets a chance to play rook d8, d5 with the ideas of bishop d6 and bishop b4. Suddenly, everything might change. I don't see him losing this game because his position looks pretty solid. So I would say that we're in either for playoffs or him winning the tournament.
Yeah, it is one of those positions where black could somehow win, but it would take a big fall on Debbie's part.
Indeed. Let's get back to Alireza Firouzja's game because this is very sharp and exciting, and there is no end game. The queens are on the board. What do you think?
What do I think? What's the material? So it's 2 pawns and a bishop,
Yeah, exchange down.
but 2 pawns. And
Yes.
the b3 pawn, not the best pawn to have because it's under some attack. But I'm trying to figure out where white wants his pieces. Does he want to bring that bishop from g4 to c4, perhaps? But then that h5 pawn is a target. So that's the struggle that white has, is that the pawns have gone too far, I think, on the king side, and that gives black some chances.
I agree with you. It is. Oh, we have Andrei Yasipenko.
Andrei, congratulations. You've just beaten Alexander Donchenko to finish on 8 out of 13 in your first Tata Steel Chess Masters. How do you feel this afternoon?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy with this win and with the result. But I can't say that I played very well every game. Yeah, but result is fine. Yeah, about game, somewhere after Queen B8, yeah, I think I thought that I'm completely fine. But after he played Rook C2, yeah, it looks like it looks like a bit advantage here for him, and I don't know where he had a mistake.
So at which point did you feel like suddenly you won this pawn and from there on?
Yeah, when he had time trouble, yeah, he played Queen A7 probably, yeah, and after that I thought maybe I can win, yeah.
And so you did. Now let's talk about your performance. 8 out of 13 here in Vai. Is this your best performance ever?
I think so, yeah, because I beat Magnus, and I never beat Magnus before.
You never played him before.
Yes, yeah. Yes, and +3, it's yeah, it's very good. I couldn't even imagine. Yeah.
And also, you finished the tournament on 2700 rating plus. So how is that for the first time to leave like with the 2700 rating?
Yeah, it's very nice, but I think it's just numbers, and it's almost nothing. When I will play good, I will have even more probably.
So is that the plan?
Yes, yes.
What is your next goal?
I just want to play good chess, and
Do you have any tournaments or games planned after this?
no, probably I will just training, and that's it.
Andre, thank you so much and congratulations
Thank
on a
you.
fantastic performance.
Thank you.
And we're back. Always lovely to see the interview of Andrei Yasipenko. Great tournament. Congratulations to him.
Yeah, and a very mature mindset. If I heard correctly, he said that rating is just a number. Is that what he was saying? And he's happy with his performance, and he just needs to continue playing the way he did.
Indeed. Let's give a quick assessment to Alireza's game, Robert. Rook fc7 was played. How white should continue?
Putting me on the spot. Have to figure out good plans for white. I see many moves. I'm trying to figure out the coordination of the moves because that b3 pawn is bothering me. I see that the rook on b7 staring directly at it. But in general, I would like to put my pieces on the f file if I'm white. So some kind of rook f1, and if you let me, rook f8 check. But I know that if I play rook
I
f1,
won't let you.
yeah, exactly. Rook f1, you play rook f7, and then it begs the question: who does the rook trade favor? Does that help black, who will have the only remaining rook on the board, or will that
I think
somehow
it was
help white?
played. I think he just played it. Rook e1.
Ah, rook e1. Okay,
He
protecting
wants
the e4
the
pawn.
queen to be free.
So where's that queen going to c3 maybe to attack the a5 pawn?
Yeah, maybe queen d2 to hit the a5 pawn.
Yeah, looks reasonable. I don't see a problem with it. I think that
Yeah.
Rada should continue being active here. Maybe queen c6 if that's possible and doesn't have some kind of tactical flaw. You put pressure on the e4 pawn. Your rook can still go to f7 at any moment, but it's the king on g8 isn't so thrilled. It's a little alone.
Yeah, this game will be very intense. Alireza will try to win this game because he is in a must-win situation to have a chance for a playoff. We do have a fun line to show in Neil's game against Jordan van Verreest. If he went in the end a queen a7 to avoid the mate on queen g7, then very nice sacrifice, queen h8.
Oh my gosh.
It's so beautiful.
Oh my gosh. And that's why the king on h6 there is for opposition. So when
Yes.
the queen is captured, the king takes away the square. Queen h8 check. That would have been, there were other winning ways. That's just too nice.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful. Queen h8 and king h8. And Jordan finished the tournament in style. Back to Alireza's game. Yet Radoslav is still taking his time after rook e1 in David Anton against Anish Giri. This is the current position, so players are just moving around as there is no breakthrough yet. And in the game of Duda against Hari Krishna, this is the end game that we talked about. It's nice to have the passer on queen's side, but very tough end game.
Yeah, double pawns tend not to be good in the end game, but there isn't that much material remaining. It seems like that point should be split.
I agree with you. Shall we take a quick break, Robert, until we reach the second time control and players will take their time to take decisions?
Sounds good to me.
I think I'm one of the players that was lucky to play some tournament during this pandemic, but still, of course, it's not like it used to be before. So it's great that we can play again. Mainly, I didn't prepare like anything specific. I just try to prepare better the openings, and usually I don't have expectations, but I'm optimistic. Like I think I can do great. I've been at a great level in classical chess, more than rapid and blitz. Well, I think mentally for a chess player is easier because usually train every day. So I think if you work constantly, I think finally you are more or less in a good shape. For me, it's important if I have tournaments and I play a lot. Tata Steel is probably the most prestigious tournament in the world. So I will just try my best, and if something goes wrong, I know it can happen. Like in that sense, I'm not pressured at all. But of course, I want to do great. I know there will be many people watching that support me. So yeah, I'll try to do my best.
And David Anton is a man with a lot of responsibility here. Not only is he trying to play his own game, other players are relying on him to take down Anish Giri. Alireza Firouzja does not make his way to a playoff, even if he wins his game, unless Anish Giri loses. And for Jordan van Forest, he's looking at this game with eager anticipation to help determine if he has to play a playoff. And if he does, will it be against his fellow Dutchman, or will it be against Alireza Firouzja? So David Anton, he is looking at this board, staring, trying to find any possibility that he can win this game.
Huge responsibility for David Anton, and h4 was the last move he played. Do you think it is a weakness in the position, or he is going to grab some space on the king side?
It's one of those moves that's both. For now, you can think about playing h5, putting your pawn in light square. But if the rooks get traded off, or one pair of rooks get traded off, that pawn can be targeted and won. That's the downside of pushing your pawns too far, like this pawn on a5. And what David has going for him is that even if black eventually does get the move d5 in, once the pawns clear out the way, the knight will gain the e4 square. That's an outpost on a light square against a dark square bishop.
Indeed. This is a very tough position to break. Anish has not a nice bishop on b8, but it does defend the d6 pawn nicely. The rook on c5, I do like this rook because it threatens to take the c4 pawn, and the a5 pawn as well ties down the rook on a1 and the knight on d2. Not a big danger here for black, but it's certainly pleasant to play it with white pieces.
Right, as you were saying, white can play with a free hand, maybe play g4 and decide how to play on the king side. And for black, you say, well, then what? You push your pawn, okay, then what?
Yeah.
I'm just going to wait to see what you actually try to do, and perhaps Anish can shuffle around rook d8, rook c8, rook f8, just keep moving that rook around, and he doesn't actually have to do much of anything because white perhaps can make no progress.
Yeah, let's see if Alireza has made a move. b3, rook f7, rook e1. No, and it's still Radoslav thinking, taking his time. The players reached a first time control, so they had 50 minutes additional time on their clock. That's why they are in deep thought right now. And the game between Pantala Harikrishna and Jan Christoph Duda looks same.
Not
Nothing
much
changed.
No, in fact, have they been repeated moves, it seems?
Yeah, I guess so as well. So it was knight e6, knight c3, king c4, knight e4, king d5, inviting knight c3, king c4, and knight e4 as well.
I get the feeling that Duda is trying to win this game, so he probably won't go for the repetition. But if he does, that makes sense. It seems like black is defending this very well. The pawn would like to break free on the A file for white, but that's easier said than done. And black's king is more active. The king on d5 is very strong here.
He did play knight c3 though here, so we might have threefold repetition. In this position. This game might end in a draw soon, so let's stay here for a bit, king c4, until we get to know what's Duda's plan, to play for a draw, or make the draw, or just to play on.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with another plan for Jan Christoph. Where does his knight want to go? How will he eventually be able to push his A pawn and create that outside pass pawn? The king for black is so active here. And if you play king e4 for white, that seems to be a reasonable move. Then there could be some kind of knight c5 check. And I'm trying to get my knight to the d3 square if you move up the board. And that could end up being a problem for white, considering how advanced that king is.
I agree. It's not risk-free position for white. Probably move repetition makes sense here, but Jan Christoph has 29 minutes, half an hour on his clock to decide he wants to make a draw or not. From the body language, I feel that he's about to make knight e4.
Yeah, it seems like he recognizes there are no real winning chances. Hare-Krishna putting up good defense. And for Jan Christoph Duda, he's not having a good tournament. He's at -2, so he has lost 2 games and he's won none. And for a player like him, he's a fighter. He has some really interesting games, and the fact that he couldn't win a single one in this tournament probably doesn't feel great when all is said and done. And it's not that he played terrible chess. No, the tournament's just that strong, but it's rare that Jan Christoph Duda finishes an event with 0 wins.
Indeed, it's frustrating for him not to win a single game, but he did fight in all the games very hard. When he was against world champion Magnus Carlsen, he defended a pawn down endgame. So he had some ups and downs in this tournament.
Yes, unfortunately, though, more downs it will be at the end of the day. And yeah, we see him here. He's just saying this tournament's about to be over. It looks like it's going to be drawn for Hare-Krishna. It's a good showing by him. He's going to finish in the middle of the pack, an even score with 6.5 out of 13, so right down the middle. But he likely wanted more. He started, I believe, 4 out of 7 or something like that. So he started with a plus, and he beat Niels Grandelius in round 3. He was the one who stopped Niels after an undefeated start, and then things, I guess, got away from him a bit down the line. But he was back and forth, a win and a loss, and an even score seems to be a fair result.
Yeah, and there is no update in Alireza's game. Radoslav is still thinking. Anish just played rook d8. But we will have Jan Christoph Duda taking his decision. So I thought, just to not to miss the result, to take a look at that game. But we can also stay at Anish's game, or we can have an interview with Fabiano Caruana.
Fabiano, you tried very hard today, but in the end, it wasn't enough. What is your opinion?
It wasn't. I was happy with the opening, but then I played a very careless move, knight g6, and then after knight e3, I thought it's over. I can't win this position. I thought like knight f4, he takes on g4, takes on f4, and everything gets liquidated. So I played this really crazy move f5. I don't know, it's probably a bad move, but it was my only move to actually keep the game going. Like in a normal tournament situation, I would just have gone for knight f4 and made a draw. But okay, I thought I should at least try, take some risks possibly. And then I got semi-optimistic. With my triple G pawns, they look very funny, but they control a lot of squares, and I have the e4 square, the c4 square, a lot of potential if white goes wrong. But I think Ariane played pretty well. I mean, I guess it never strayed outside the bounds of equality. Even though I was optimistic, I'm pretty sure it was always a dead equal position, and the draw was logical.
Okay. And then, in the end, there is +3, a decent result, of course. But what I also remember is great defensive achievements. But when you tried to win the game, you were a little bit unlucky. It just didn't work. Are you satisfied with this result?
Yeah, I mean, +3 is not bad by any means. And I was happy that at least I come into the last round with a chance at first. But it is disappointing. I mean, I missed a lot of chances early on. Like my first 4 games, I could have pretty much won all of them if I had made the most of my chances. And at the end, I was hoping at least to score +1 from these last 2 games. I thought normally I should have decent chances of scoring +1, getting to +4, and hoping. Of course, it wasn't a guarantee even that +4 would be enough to tie for first, but I was hoping that it would be enough and I would still be in it. But yeah, it didn't work out. I was, I think, running out of energy at the end, rushing in my decisions. I don't feel like I was really at my best these last like 3 games or so. After the game against Wojtaszek, it felt like, yeah, the play wasn't really very good, and against Ali Reza, it was just, I guess this just took too much energy out of me this whole game, and I felt kind of without energy in the last 2. I still hoped to put in a fight, but it wasn't quite enough.
Okay. Final question. Were you surprised, as we were, with the achievements of the 2 Dutchmen?
Well, okay, for Anish, it's kind of an expected result to be leading. I mean, he's a top player and
To do well.
Yeah, to do well. +4, it's a good result, but it's nothing that we would consider too surprising. I mean, Jordan, I think, played amazingly well. It was super impressive. He was well prepared. He was playing very well. I think he showed like a super high quality throughout, and it was a very deserved +4. And I don't feel like. I mean, I feel like this might even correspond to his strength. That it didn't feel like a fluke or anything. It feels like he's just a very strong player, and this is a result that's he's capable of. And everything went very well for him. And I still have like a flashback of our first game, because if I had converted that, then maybe the tournament would have taken a different turn for both of us. But as it is, I mean, just a great achievement and very deserved for him.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Not a bad tournament for Fabiano Caruana, but he was not extremely happy about the outcomes of his games. He could have done more, missed a lot of chances, but still, nice result.
Yeah, it is a good result, and he is the number 2 rated player in the world. So he was happy to compete for first all the way into the last round. But as he was saying, he missed opportunities in some games, and especially in the last several rounds against Ali Reza, he knew he had knight takes g2. That's going to bug him for a while that he didn't play it. And then in this final round, he was outplaying Aryan, but there was never anything concrete. So it's just one of those events where you do everything you can. You play good chess, and ultimately your opponents are super strong players and are not just going to lose games to you.
Yeah, and he was very nice praising Jordan van Foreest's performance, amazing by Kanzai, and I agree that it's expected result from Anish, but Jordan's performance was just very impressive.
Right, one is far more surprising than the other, even if finishing +4 for any player in this field, that's not expected, but it's just like, for Anish to say, okay, yeah, that he's of course capable of that.
Nobody is surprised, yeah.
Yeah, because also Anish has scored 9 points in Vaikonze before, where he tied with Magnus Carlsen. He's finished in 2nd place a number of times. So yeah, it's not something anyone takes for granted, but nobody is sitting there like, oh, well, that's weird. It's becoming a norm for Anish. So I think that Fabiano, those nice words about Jordan, he means them. He's generally speaking a very respectful individual and humble player. And Jordan himself, the guy was in disbelief at his performance, but everyone else is starting to see it. Like Vishy was talking about it, Bobby's talking about it, and Jordan is improving.
Very much deserved. Jordan van Foreest had an amazing tournament. Let's take a look at Ali Reza's game, because we have a move here. After rook e1, rook c6, and Ali Reza just played Where's the move? Bishop e2. Regrouping this bishop. Oh, I like this. To c4 probably, not dropping the h5 pawn. And this bishop then defends the b3 pawn and puts pressure on e6.
Yeah, that's just a much
If
better
that's
diagonal.
the plan, I don't know.
No,
Maybe bishop b5 is a direct threat now.
For sure, it's just a better diagonal. The bishop on g4 was just doing one thing, attacking the e6 pawn. Now the bishop on e2 can choose, as you were just pointing out, where to go to from here. And bishop b5 is a pretty big threat that you don't want to allow, as that will win white back in exchange, and white's 2 pawns ahead. So you don't want to see that move play. But I was going to mention earlier, and I think is important for a lot of people, is that this could become a bishops of opposite color position. So what black will consider doing is giving up a rook for that light square bishop, because if I can take that light square bishop, then you have other problems for white, the h5 pawn, the light squares in general, and if we trade off all the pieces, many positions with endgames, bishops opposite color have good drawing chances.
Indeed, bishop e2, and now Radoslav is taking the times. There is something to do about bishop b5. Yes, after bishop b5, maybe it would be nice for black to take the bishop on b5, but then after a takes b5, we give white a passer. Dangerous one.
Yeah, that's not where I'd ideally like to give up the exchange, but perhaps queen b8. Just to show this idea, if I play queen b8 and you do play bishop b5, you could, of course, play bishop c4 instead. But if you play bishop b5, I take you, and I take again, and I say, all right, I'm only down 1 pawn. We have bishops of opposite color. Maybe I'm able to hold this game.
I agree with you. We do have a move in young Christoph Duda against Hare Krishna. This game is probably going to end not in repetition, because I see that after knight c3, king c4, white played f3, not knight e4, but f3, g6, and now knight e4. Another chance for threefold repetition with knight c3 and king c4, but players are taking it slow.
Just trying to squeeze the last life out of this position. If maybe there's some winning chance if one of the players goes wrong. I think Duda is the one who keeps trying to win here, and maybe Hare Krishna, his response will be f5. If white plays b3, trying to create that outside pass pawn finally, I think black can play f5 and start advancing his own pawns, and there shouldn't be any real risk for Hare Krishna.
This game continues, and in Anish's game, Anish played rook d8. Anton is taking pretty much time here. Do you think Anish is threatening d5 right now if white doesn't do anything?
I think he's threatening to threaten d5.
Threatening to threaten.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's just a move that really changes the nature of the game, but it could backfire for black. The good news is your bishop is finally coming to life after d5. The bad news is you give the knight a square like e4, a more advanced square, and that could give white some quick play. So d5, I would really look into that move. I'm just not yet sure that I would play it.
So in case white plays h5, just for analysis sake, if black plays d5, c takes d5, e takes d5, e takes d5, and rook. Oh, maybe it's interesting to take with the other rook, because now the a5 pawn becomes a target.
Yeah, that actually looks really nice for black, because that a5 pawn is such a problem. And if you get to attack my pawn right away, I don't have time to coordinate well. So that doesn't look very pleasant for white. So d5 is becoming more of an idea, but I think maybe then white should leave it for the moment. So h5.
Yeah.
And if you play d5, can I play rook a4, for example? Just say, hey, please take one of my pawns.
But didn't after maybe d4? Oh, am I losing after d4?
I guess I go knight b3 and king d3.
And c5.
Yeah, c5's coming.
And my bishop is still dead.
Yes.
Yeah, so h5, d5, rook a4 is a great way to keep the tension.
Yeah,
Interesting what's gonna happen.
Right, that's the thing. D5, you better be not 100% sure. You better be 1,000% sure
Yeah.
that you have a clear way forward because opening up the position, generally speaking, sounds good for bishops, but you play that move too quickly. The rooks get active. You create some problems with your pawns as black. Your E5 pawn loses the pawn's defense. If white can get knight to B3, then you can play C5 as you were just demonstrating. So I do think that it could be an issue for black if you play the move like too speedily.
And do you think if white plays h5 and at some point king f6, I don't know if it's a good move here, but I had an idea. Oh no, this is hanging. My idea was to play rook a4 and then maybe king g5, but then I wanted to play knight b3 with the idea of c5, but it does not work, I guess.
Wow, that's bring the king out to g5 does make sense. It's another thing that white has to worry about is if you push pawns too far, the king can try to go win them. So rook a2 was played instead. And now your question of d5, that's the big one. That's the essential one right now.
Now this is valid question. d5, taking everything on d5 once again should not be very nice for white because black has big pressure on a5 pawn. Probably white is still doing okay with, I don't know how to keep this pawn, knight b3 or rook a1.
Yeah, either way, it's a bit passive for white all of a sudden. So yeah, it's the ultimate Shakespearean question, d5 or not to d5. And Anish has to figure that out because it changes the entire nature of the game. And David, I think he doesn't mind it. It also gives him some more winning chances because the position to this point is locked up.
Did d5, if it happens, then white's chance is to play rook a4 once again, or rook a2. It does not do anything much, so probably Anish can go back to f8 or c8.
He can just move his rooks nonstop. What's white's winning plan, right? You eventually
and
need
taking
to...
the piece in the hand.
Yes, and we have a good view of it too. But what piece is it? A pawn? Usually it's a pawn.
Is it? Was it a pawn? I thought it was... Yeah, maybe it was a pawn. Usually it is pawn.
It just by a numbers game, they're mostly pawns on the board, so it's likely that it's a pawn, but not too many pawns have been captured. Only one pawn has been captured, so it's actually could be another piece this time.
Yes, when the capture will happen, or will it ever happen, and players just will sit and wait.
Yeah, sitting and waiting is what this game is all about right now. And actually, I'm trying to think, is there a way that black can like go for more? The bishop on b8 being stuck is going to bother me forever. But what if I try to play king to f6, for example? Is there a way for black to actually say, you know, I'm not just going to move and shuffle. I'm going to create some threats. So a move like king f6, I don't really know if I'm trying to go g5 for black, but you brought the king to g5. It looked pretty good. So I'm just trying to copy what you showed earlier.
Only one thing I'm worried about is that if I play rook a4, am I threatening knight b3 c5 or not?
It's the same question as earlier. Like, is black trying to play d5? Because if you do play knight b3 and c5, you open up black's bishop, but you're the one who initiates it. So I think that is a reasonable plan. It just is another one of those moments where is it actually working out in white's favor, or is black not opposed to this decision?
Yeah, and 22 minutes for David Tonguijaro for next time control, which will be in 15 moves, and 37 for Anish. So time is not going to be crucial here. But if both of them get into time trouble and complications happen, then it might be a three-result game.
Yes, it's not an easy position to move forward in. And every single move you're thinking, do I play d5? Am I allowing d5? a plan that I can go for, and it seems like there isn't quite a plan for either side. But then you get into this mindset, oh, there's nothing here. And as soon as you start thinking that way, you start overlooking some of your opponent's chances. So I think that both players need to remain alert. And it's all about d5, in my opinion.
It is. And all eyes are on this game right now because it's such an important game. The result of this game affects the outcome of standings. If Anish draws, then we for sure get a tiebreak. Jordan van Foreest and Anish Giri, two Dutchmen, will fight for the gold medal. If Anish loses and Alireza wins, then Alireza and Jordan will play the playoffs, but if Anish wins, there won't be any tie breaks. Anish will be the sole leader. With you, we've seen the interview of Jordan, how happy he was. So no matter what will happen, he will be very happy. He will be very happy about his results.
Yes, and in some ways, he's playing with house money because he didn't expect to be at the top, and now that he's here, oh, he can go in, and if he loses a playoff match, he's still tied for first place, and that's great. And that I think could play to his favor, especially with how well prepared he is. And in a quick game, you get into these sharp lines that Jordan has prepared very well. That could be difficult. And I do want to draw our attention to the Ali Reza game because a big decision has just been made by Firouzja, where he brought his bishop to b5. He didn't have to do that, but he is allowing Radek to sacrifice the exchange right back and get into a bishop of opposite color
And
position.
guess what? Another big decision in Anish's game because I've seen him moving d5.
So as soon as I bring our attention to the other game, and he says, no, focus back on me. This is about first place. I'm was atop the leaderboard before the last round. So he plays d5. Firouzja puts his bishop on b5, and all of a sudden we have a lot of things to figure out. So let's keep on Anish for the moment because I think that this is a little more tense, and we have them on screen right now. d5 was played. And
I was going to ask you actually, Robert, what do you think is the mindset of Anish Giri? He wants to wait forever and thinks that, yeah, draw is fine result, and I'm going to play tie breaks with either Jordan or Alireza. I don't think that he knows who has the best chances. Or he just thinks that, okay, this is my chance and I'm going to risk it and I'm going to just play to have a game.
I think he's using the clock as a weapon because David has been spending quite a deal of time. We've reached the time patrol and moved 40. They gained 50 minutes, and David has spent half an hour of his 50 minutes. And the position is coming to life that bishop on b8 wants to win the a5 pawn. We said that as soon as it got trapped back there. That pawn on a5, that's something that you're going to have to be very vigilant about. And now, what do you do? If you take on d5, if David does that, now the rook on c5 gets control of the c file. If you take twice on d5, there are going to be pins and the a5 pawn is still weak. So I think that Anish is playing for a win, and he timed this 100% accurately.
Yeah, I agree with you. We will see very soon how in the leaderboard. Anish Giri versus uh, David Anton Guijarro, and of course Alireza Firouzja against Wojtaszek. Let's stay with Anish's game. Just when we thought that it would be a long game where players are shuffling around, Anish went for d5, Robert, and after c takes d5, and a lot of traits on d5, rook, da1, and this is the current position. Do you see some chances coming for Black to win this game?
Yeah, it's a role reversal completely because black couldn't do anything except for shuffle. That's what it seemed. Now white has to keep an eye on that a5 pawn. So in fact, white's rooks have to stay in a really bad position staring into your own pawn. So if you look at the board here, there's action taking place on both sides. So a bishop should thrive in that scenario, but this e5 pawn that's in the bishop's way, and the knight can jump to e4 so that when the bishop reaches d6, the knight can capture it. So I think that white can bail out with the knight capturing the bishop, but that still doesn't end the game because of how poorly placed white's remaining pieces are. The rooks on d5 and c5 are clearly dominant compared to the rooks on a2 and a1.
Yeah, although probably white is threatening to go knight e4 next, and bad news for black is that rook b5 and keeping the fifth rank is not possible because of knight c3. So it might simplify into a completely drawn position, or we might see some complications here. And David Anton is under 20 minutes, while Anish Giri has 32 minutes on the clock. He's about to make a move.
Yeah, he's reaching. And one idea that he can aim for is, so you're right though, that knight e4 is so frustrating because of this fork with knight c3. But can
Do you
black
want to sacrifice pawn?
No, not yet.
No.
You know I like to sacrifice pieces, so you get me. So thank you for offering the pawn. But what I was going to say is maybe in the long term, black is going to play king d7, king c6, like try to get the king over there and add to the pressure on that a5 pawn.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That was my fault there. Bishop d6 is played. Knight e4. Now rook b5 would be a huge mistake because of knight c3. I hope it won't happen. Maybe rook c4.
Why not? Just try to advance your pieces more. And even though white can try to exchange a pair of rooks, the a5 pawn will remain an issue. So that's what you have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and we can see how important is activity in the game, because now the rooks on d file and c file, it looks just great. Rook c4 is on the board, and yeah, we said about this h4 pawn. Is it a weakness or is it a strength to gain space? Now that I look at it, if white trades the pieces, knight takes d6, king takes d6, probably then he has to take care of another weakness in the position, which is h4 pawn.
And look at black's pieces there. The king on d6 is helpful. In the endgame, use the king as an attacker. And so the king is advancing, the h4 pawn's under attack, the c and d files, the only open files on the board, are black's for the taking. White's rooks passively defending that pawn.
Indeed. Let's take a look at Alireza's game. Was there any decision taken after bishop b5? Radoslav is still trying to figure out. He has to go back with the rook on c6, or it's time to sacrifice. It's time to give the exchange back, but play this very unpleasant position with pawn down.
Yes, because the problem is the king on g8 could be attacked, and that bishop on h7, you were the one who rightly pointed it out. I thought that it would be okay there because pressuring the e4 pawn, but you're right that the bishop on h7 is still stuck even in the opposite colored bishop position. So if you do sacrifice on b5, at the end of this, I think white can play more like queen f4 and black stuck.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I could stop your checkmates with the rook back to c8 and queen to e8, and the light squares could be black's later in the game, but for now, you're sitting quite passively.
I agree with you. Interesting what kind of decision Black will take here to take the bishop or go back with the rook. Another interesting changes happened suddenly out of the blue in the game of Anish Giri and David Anton. Black is having the bishop free. It's not anymore locked on b8. Now it is about white to decide he wants to take this bishop or he wants to allow bishop b4, which also looks pretty unpleasant, though keeping the knight on e4, blockading everything. The king side and the center looks also nice for white.
Although it doesn't blockade that idea that I keep randomly mentioning, is king d7, king c6, king b5,
Yeah.
bishop b4. Like if I get everything that I could ask for on that side of the board, but you can't neglect the king side either. So you're right that it should not be something that Black will accomplish, but there are moments you just make one inaccuracy and suddenly the king appears on b5 and your a5 pawn really starts feeling the heat.
Time is very important in this game, I think. David Anton was taking a lot of time during this game and he is down to 16 minutes. They do have second increment coming after 12 moves, which is additional 15 minutes on their clocks. But that's it. Then it's over. You players just hope for 30 seconds on each move.
And with, 12 more minutes to make the next time control, down to 16 minutes for David Anton, that's not that much time with a position that is getting more complicated because white might have to take a big decision, one that you can't take back. For instance, taking this bishop on d6 right now. Once that knight and bishop are traded, they don't come back on the board, and h4 is under attack, as you pointed out. So I do believe that David should hold this game. It's just turning in a way that's really uncomfortable because now he needs to find the accurate moves to defend.
Yeah, somehow we had an impression whole game that David Anton was having a slight plus in the game and he was trying to find a breakthrough, but what happened in the game is he just allowed the d5 breakthrough and now the tables turned.
And look at, I mean, he's not sure. He moved his rook, it looks like, to d1. Is that,
Yeah.
I believe, what he went with? Oh, rook d2.
Rook d2.
I saw a rook coming to the d file. I just
Yeah.
put two of them on rows next to each other. So rook d2. And if you take on d2, if you take with the knight back on d2, then the h4 pawn.
Yeah, maybe. But then h4 pawn is hanging, no?
That's what I'm looking at. But perhaps the pawn's not that important because knight e4 and your rook is shut out from the queen side.
Yeah,
and
that's correct.
It's an extra pawn for Black, but you can't make use of it, and that's quite annoying.
That's correct. Rook d2. Is there a way to keep the rooks? Difficult to say. Rook cannot go to b5 because then the bishop is hanging on d6. If rook d4 or any other move, then white can trade the rooks, trade everything, and that should not be a big deal for white.
Right, because at the end of this all, white will put a rook on the c1 square, and
Yeah.
even if you lose the a5 pawn, you'll eventually trade everything off and then get your rook to c7. And once that rook lands there, it should be enough to hold, but it's still, there's plenty to work through here. And look at Anish. I think he just took the rook.
Takes it.
And we'll see if David takes with the king or the knight.
The problem with the king is that bishop b4 might be a check here, yeah?
Yes, and bishop
Yeah, so
b4.
he
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
takes with the knight.
Yeah, I just was going to show that your variation with the bishop b4 check. The king will go to b5, finally. Right? I kept saying how the king could go over to the queen side. Something like that would be a problem. Or the rook will come to d4 and d5, something of that nature, and the pawns start dropping off.
Yeah, now the question is, white is sacrificing a pawn for activity, because if black takes the pawn on h4, knight e4 back, then white has very good chance to come back, take the bishop maybe, at some point, and rook c1, rook c7, it's not going to be easy for black.
And even if black remains up a pawn, but the queenside pawns get traded, it's a very easy draw. So
Yeah.
that's what David can always count on.
Indeed, now it is Anish taking his time to decide. Do you think he will take that pawn, or he will try to use his activity?
I think taking the pawn could backfire more
Yeah.
easily than other variations. But if he sees that he can take on h4, then bring his rook back into the game, like rook f4, rook f8, something like that, and get away with it, then taking the pawn makes sense. But if he feels that his rook is kind of offside over there and white has the quick initiative, then it would not be a pawn that I would go for.
Where to go with the rook, though? If rook c6, then I'm in the way, blocking king d7, king c6. If rook c5, then knight e4 is jumping, and yeah, there are options to trade. And if rook goes somewhere else, to put bishop b4, let's say rook c8, knight e4, bishop b4, yeah, then black can still try king d7. Not king c6,
But
but
it's
still some
point.
chances.
Yeah, you keep chances alive for sure. I think as we've been talking about it,